Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing. Testing. Audio test. Okay, I think we're good there. I think we're good on YouTube. Testing, testing, testing. Okay, YouTube's good. Testing, testing. Okay, that's playing from my machine, but that's fine because I'll mute that. And then I just gotta turn on that, and we should be good to go. Okay, I think we're all set. All right, hello everybody. Hope everybody's having the day that they deserve, whatever that might be. It's fine because I'll mute that. And then I just gotta turn on so I'm connected there. I just need to connect the other app. There we go. Should be good. And we can bring up a guest. Great, let's bring up Pro Basehead Enemy. What a name. What a name, what a name. Hey, how's it going?
Nigga, 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 nigga.
Bravest Christian. Block. I can convince you I'm a peer-reviewed noetic scientist. Well, then you should consider joining. I think you're using my headset microphone on TikTok. On TikTok, that is the webcam, you're right. Hopefully this is better. This audio better? I think that was a good catch. Yeah. Nectu, thank you for the $5. I know it was exhausting for you, but I thought you did great yesterday. Yeah, no, yesterday was a good live stream. It'll probably become the norm. We'll probably do it once a week, I think is the plan. Wait, what? Okay, how about now? Are we good now? I think we're good now. Audio should be much better. Excellent, excellent. Sorry, I was using my headphone microphone for some reason, and I don't know why it was doing that, but here we are. Hello, everybody who is watching on YouTube or on TikTok. Make sure to like the live and share it with people who you know might be interested, because the more people we get in here, the better and sooner we have conversations. Balint, welcome again. How's it going?
Yeah, good, man. How are you? I don't know. I think that was you. You hopped in my live and I was all freaked out and excited. But I know I'm not quite opposition, but I did have a question about the trans conversation yesterday. I don't know if you want to get into that or if
Not today.
just
If
okay,
it's a quick question, if it's a quick question, I'll answer it. But
well, so I'm like very left leaning. I'm pro LGBTQA. I'm pro trans, but I do think that because specifically trans women in sports is a new thing, I'd just like to see maybe like some sort of new, since it's so new, like we don't really have any rules and stuff. And I just think that there are cases where that I would like to see a little bit more, like I am pro trans, but I just think there are cases of trans women in sports that I think does make it a very unfair thing. And I know I get a lot of, like, because I'm left and a lot of my followers are more left, that they don't necessarily like that. But I don't know what your stance is on trans women in sports, and if you you even want to get into that again. If not, no worries.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do the thing where I kick you and then I'm gonna explain, just so it
Okay.
then, to keep with the rules. But essentially, it's not actually that new. Is if I remember correctly, the Olympics has been allowing trans people in to compete since the early 2000s, so it's like more than 20 years old. But also beyond that, like honestly, I don't care. Like I care like there what there's like you can count the number of trans athletes in like college sports on one hand. Like I don't know. And it's not like trans athletes are winning all of the thing. Like I just don't care. Like it is such a tiny issue. It is so insignificant that it should not be a major point of policy discussion. Anyway, Benjamin, how's it going?
Hi, how are you? Good to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. Do you believe in God?
Yeah, I believe in God. I actually, as I said, I'm actually a peer-reviewed noetic scientist. I do a lot of studies into things like synchronicities, things like that, which suggest highly that there is some sort of factor out there, be it God or some sort of quantum, I don't know, that does allow for highly improbable things to occur that would be considered a higher power anyway. So God might not be the right word, but I definitely believe there is some sort of collective or higher power.
So when I refer to God, I mean a being or perhaps a mind um, that is responsible for creating and or sustaining the universe. Is that a thing that you
Well,
believe
I
in?
do. I personally, yes, believe in that, but
Okay.
I think
So
the evidence we have so far isn't necessarily that we are at a stage that that thing that created the universe is real. We are at a stage where the evidence suggesting that the universe can act in godlike ways, if that makes sense.
okay, so if the universe may or may not behave in strange ways, but that isn't the topic of conversation. The
Okay.
question is why, so what's a compelling reason that I should believe in a creator being?
Okay, but see, you're trying to push away from me saying that the universe is behaving that there is a God. That's what
What is
the
look, when I
there's a
say
there,
I don't know what it means for the universe to behave in a way that there is a like as if there is a God, because as far as I'm concerned, even if things like parapsychology like held up, and even if things like telepathy or foresight held up, that doesn't say anything about there existing a God. Like that's
Well, you
completely
said
unrelated.
even if telepathy held up, at this stage, it's the statistics for telepathy are one
Look,
in
the
300 trillion quadrillion.
you
So
can
that's
make
where
that
we're
claim.
at.
I'm not familiar with that data. It's not
Okay,
something that that's the topic of conversation. So it's just
okay.
like not
No, no,
relevant for the topic.
no problem, no problem, no problem. Well,
So
all I'm saying
you said
is
that you believe in a
all the
creator. Why do
evidence.
you believe in a creator?
Well, okay. I believe that the universe is acting as if there is a creator or
What does that
is
mean?
a higher power.
What does
So
that mean?
essentially, the materialist paradigm is that everything is just happening randomly, essentially. Yes.
No, and
Um.
also atheism is does not imply materialism.
Okay. No. No. That's. I understand that, but I'll give you a really simple example. So, have you heard of the Global Consciousness Project?
I haven't. But again,
So,
even if consciousness were global, that doesn't mean that there's a creator being.
okay. No. Okay. So,
So it seems
but I,
so it's like doesn't seem related.
so you said I am. The question here isn't if there's a creator being; it's if there's a God or a higher power.
Yes,
That's what we're
but
really
so
talking about.
what I'm
So you're
referring to
you're
when
you're
I say
bringing it back to
God,
creator. Do I believe in a
when I say
creator? Yes.
when I say God, what I mean is a being that is supernatural and is responsible for creating or maintaining the universe. That's what I mean. If
Mate,
you're referring
see,
to
I
something
think we're at
else,
a
then
stage.
it's just not what I'm talking about.
Like, I think we're at a stage where we can say it is maintaining. I don't think even due to the nature of time itself, we can say something was created beforehand because there was no beforehand because there was no time before that. So I think that's kind of a moot point.
Okay,
Like,
so
but
so what is the
I
evidence
think
for a
we can
supernatural being? Presumably
a
this thing is being
supernatural.
supernatural should exist outside or independently of the universe.
And see, you're okay. Well, it doesn't have to be independent of the universe. It doesn't have to be independent of the universe. So, for
So
example,
that would, by the way, if it weren't independent of the universe, that would mean that something that depends on the universe is sustaining the universe, which seems like that you don't that it's actually not sustaining the universe then, because it depends on the universe in order to do the sustaining.
not necessarily. Well, or the what I'm getting at is the universe could hypothetically, through consciousness, create a higher being and like a god type entity or force. Like, okay, can I just talk about the Global Consciousness Project for 1 second? Is that fair?
Is it related to the existence of a god? If not, then no.
No, absolutely, it is. Or it relates to a bigger power due to consciousness at play.
So to be clear, pantheism is consistent with, or sorry, panpsychism is consistent with atheism. So it seems like you're trying to push something that's unrelated.
No, not necessarily. Like, so okay. So one, I'll say straight away, I cannot look. I have a scientific mind. I was raised in a scientific family. I'm a peer-reviewed scientist, all that sort of good stuff. I can't say there was a creator being, but what I can say from over 20 years in the noetic science field is there 100% seems to be a force that acts in a similar way to what religions describe as God or miracles. You know, like even at this stage, like we've proved just in Nature back in November, we proved that spiritual healing was real. And that's Nature. This isn't some tiny little journal. In the journal Nature, we proved
Okay, but again,
healing
that
was
has
real.
nothing to do with the existence of a god, right?
No, but these are all data points which are relevant to the argument. So, like even in my own life, I'll give you a really, really simple example.
So
I spent 5 years. No, let me speak. I spent 5 years rewiring my neuroplasticity and quantum state through observation to love. I often wondered during that time if people with the name Amorim or Love, the last name, had an advantage because of the way it would affect their neural state. And I ended up marrying a woman after that called Tamara Amorim, and now I use the name Benjamin Amorim Boyle. So it's just these
Benjamin,
synchronicities occur.
do you know what a Hilbert space is?
What? No, I don't.
How can you talk about quantum mechanics if you don't know what a Hilbert space is?
Okay, I'm not a quantum physicist. I'm a noetic scientist.
Then why did you just invoke quantum mechanics?
Okay, so, well, look, I don't know what a Hilbert space is. I may know it if you say it, but continue anyway.
Well, it's like the fundamental object of quantum mechanics. It's like the thing that you learn on like day 1 or day 2 of a quantum mechanics course.
Okay.
So like,
Okay, cool.
I am baffled by your ability to say, oh, you rewired your quantum state when you don't know what a Hilbert space is.
But I understand the effects of observation on quantum systems.
I suspect
that's
you
noetic
don't.
science.
Do you know what decoherence is?
Well, yes, I know what decoherence is. It's like an entanglement when two entangled photons become less entangled, for example.
No, it's not a reduction of entanglement. It's an increase in entanglement across the larger system. But
okay.
like I don't know it. Like, look, I haven't read the stuff that you're. So I haven't read the stuff that you're referring to. Who knows? I could very well be wrong about this, but it just seems like you're trying to pull in stuff that you don't know about to make it sound more scientific.
And I feel like you're trying to just use quantum mechanics as opposed to, like, I studied medicine originally. This is how I got into consciousness studies. That was my basis. So, like, no, I'm not a quantum physicist. You may be.
So then how can you say something about your quantum state if you're not a quantum physicist?
Okay, you're focusing. Fine, focus on the neuroplasticity then.
No, but here's the thing: the fact that you had no idea what you were talking about there makes me doubt your entire worldview now.
That's so okay. So because I said quantum, well, I tell you where I got quantum state from. So essentially, if you observe uh, this has been proven thousands of repeated experiments. If you try observe a random number generator that's pumping out more ones and zeros, you're able to influence it to get more ones and zeros. If you observe a double slit experiment, you can influence the result of the double slit experiment. This is like you
Yeah,
can
I'm not
even
convinced that
look up.
that's the case.
It is the
I'm
case.
I'm
It
fairly
is
I'm
the
fairly
case.
sure I'm fairly certain that, if that were well attested to, that somebody would have a Nobel Prize, right?
Yeah, and they should. Dr. Dean Radin should have a Nobel Prize for this. Like that. That's the scientist that's done this. Should he have it? Yes, but the world does not accept this type of science. I completely agree with you that he should have a Nobel Prize. 100%. This
So is it
has been
so it's
repeated.
a conspiracy?
I'm not saying it's a conspiracy. Like, okay,
So why doesn't he have
don't
a Nobel
turn this.
Prize?
I don't know. I'm not on the Nobel Prize committee, but it's like, go look it up. Look up Dr. Dean Radin double slit experiment intention observation. It's peer reviewed. Go look it up right now. Yeah, go to Google Scholar. He should have a Nobel Prize. Maybe it is a conspiracy. Like if you're the one who's saying it is, maybe it is. That's where I'm getting my quantum observation.
Hold on. Is this from 2016?
I don't know. How long ago is that? Yeah, probably. Yeah. There's been a few of them.
What paper or what journal was it published in? Do you know? Like the
I can't remember. No.
Okay, so I pulled up a paper that was published in Physics Essays. I don't know what Physics Essays is. Is that a is this a journal? Oh, well, regardless. And then so here I pulled up the paper from Physics Essays, published in 2012. Um, and it looks like a paper, all right. So the claim is that intention was able to affect the outcome of the double slit experiment?
So essentially, the way observation affects the outcome, but the intention of your observation itself can affect the outcome. So it's like what you want to observe is the probability of that observation increases.
Okay. I mean, if this is published in a physics journal, taken seriously by physicists, if it's a physics journal, then it should have loads of citations, but it doesn't seem like it does, and it doesn't seem like any physicists are really talking about or caring about it. I haven't read this. Or actually, I may have read it a long time ago, but the point is the fringe things are taken seriously when they're compelling. So it's a little bit suspect to me that this fringe thing is not being taken seriously if it's indeed compelling.
Well, I think it is. Like, this is being repeated all around the world. I think one of the repeats is happening in Princeton actually as well. So it's not like it's like there's anomalous labs.
So
I believe.
Can you find any mainstream physicists that have commented on this?
What? I don't know. No, I don't. I'm. That's not what I
mean. If it was published in a physics journal, which the claim is that it was, then
you
surely.
Just found it.
Well, I don't know if this is a physics journal. I've never heard of this publication called Physics Essays before.
Okay.
So I don't know. Like it could be suspect. Like I could look into it if you wanted to. But the point is if this was indeed published by like a reputable physics journal, then that means that at least 2, sometimes more, physicists would have read it and reviewed it, which means that at least 2, maybe more physicists would have commented on it. So where are the comments? Like where?
I
know who Dean Radin is. Dean Radin is regarded as fringe. So like, where are the people who are not fringe saying, "Huh, yeah, this is interesting"?
Look, I don't follow what everyone says. That I can't. I look that argument. I can't answer that argument. I'm
Okay.
just like I'm
And
just talking.
so okay. Now so this is like perhaps interesting. I haven't read it. I'm not an experimentalist anyway, but suppose that it's true. What does this have to do with the existence of a god?
So
This just means that there's some conscious influence on quantum effects, right?
no, but but you didn't get the second part. So the only reason we got into that is because you were saying you started asking me about quantum physics, and I said it was about the observation. That's why we actually talked about that. But the existence of a god, the point I was trying to make is there are extreme synchronicities which are well out on the long tail of like of life that do occur in people's lives, essentially. So which implies that there is some sort of higher force at play, kind of leading things like in particular directions, if that makes sense. And that's, I'm not saying at all that there's a creator God, but like and like all I'm giving you is a boundary set. It could be aliens, for example. Like I don't know. Like maybe there's aliens that are helping control or something like that. Or there's some other crazy physics explanation that we don't understand yet. But all I'm saying is at this stage of the world, look up, type in gcp2.net as well. That's a
Hold on,
good one for
continue the
you to
argument.
look at. Right?
So would you be able to express your argument in the form of syllogism?
I don't know what a
Perhaps
syllogism is.
inductive or deductive? Say, if this is true, then if this is true, then either God exists, or we have good reason to think that God exists, or there's evidence that God exists, and then you tell me what thing is true.
Sure. If extreme long tail synchronous events can continuously be repeated in an individual's life, then we have reason to believe a higher power exists. I don't necessarily say God. There could be a variety of different things that could create that, but I think that's.
So it seems like that the first premise, namely that highly synchronous, unusual events occurring, that seems like it has nothing to do with like a higher power existing.
Why?
Like they just seem disconnected ideas.
I don't. But then, so how would, but like something a human can't create that keeps repeating over and over and again, that someone's life just goes way out onto the long tail of what is statistically possible. That's kind of what I'm implying here.
Right. But you would need to, but in order for this to be a good explanation, you would need to show that whatever this higher power is or well accounts for that data, whereas the alternative explanations do not well account for that data.
What would the alternative explanations be?
That's on you. I mean, like, it's not my claim.
Well, as I said, it could be anything. It could be aliens, some quantum force that we don't know. It could be a variety of different things. But what I'm kind of coming into this conversation with is, maybe I shouldn't have come in because you're particularly talking about God. Maybe I'm talking about some sort of higher force that could be some sort of quantum force or some sort of or aliens or anything. Like there could be anything. I'm not suggesting necessarily that there 100% is a God. What I'm suggesting is we're gathering and gathering and gathering more evidence.
So if we grant all of your evidence, which I'm not prepared to grant, but suppose that I do.
Yeah,
if we grant all of your evidence, all that gets us to is that there's something unexplained in the universe.
Yeah.
But that doesn't get us anywhere close to any kind of theism.
If that's something unexplained, is that a higher force is at play?
No, we don't even know. We don't even know that there's a higher force at play. All this is that our current understanding of the universe is incomplete. That's all the data that you have would imply.
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but also if that data, which you can't accept, I understand that,
It's
if
not that
that
I can't
data
accept it. I'm just not
existed,
prepared to. I haven't looked at it
yeah,
personally.
no, that's okay. But that would have to at least move you to agnostic, because one of the high probabilities would be that it is God or a higher power as opposed to some unknown force.
So to be clear, A, it doesn't have to move you to agnostic if you have other reasons that are pulling you towards atheism, other, arguments, other pieces of evidence, whatever. B, we have yet to establish that a higher force or a higher probability or like a higher power is a high probability option, right? Again, something being unknown, something being unexplained, does not get you to does not provide any degree of evidence for any claim, actually, because it's unknown, it's unexplained, right?
I don't disagree with you. Like, I'm not here to try and argue that God is real because it's what I believe. I'm here to present some sort of case that there is some sort of force out there that is acting as religions would call God. Is that a fair way to put it?
I mean, perhaps, but like, ancient pagan religions would say that like lightning is a force that religions would call, or that they would is caused by something that they would call God. But like, it's just not really consistent with the way that we think about the world. By the way, I did look into it. The journal that Radin's papers were published in, Physics Essays, is not a reputable journal. In 2017, they published an article from an amateur physicist who claimed to redefine the elementary charge and eliminate the fine structure constant. There was another time when they published a paper saying that E equals mc squared was wrong. Like they aren't taken seriously by physicists
Well,
generally.
check the, like this is being repeated.
It has a impact factor that's like in the floor.
That's okay.
So
Like,
this
no,
is
not
to say that like
okay.
Dean Radin's publication is in like not a physics journal. Like it's not taken seriously whatsoever. Now we could wait. Did he publish both of these papers in the same journal? I think he did. Which yes, of course he did, because of course that would accept fringe things. I mean, like we could go into deeper and deeper things and look at where it was repeated, but I don't know. It just like seems suspect. Not to say that's false, but seems suspect. Anyway,
No, that's okay. Like, I'm not here to argue the validity of the experiment. I'm here to say the experiment was done, has been repeated. That I'm not like I'm on your side when it comes to science.
where
being
was it repeated?
science.
Where was it repeated?
I don't know. I've just
How can I find
I've watched videos. How can you find it? You could. I tell you what, you could probably
Actually,
just contact
I'll just look at the citations on Dean Radin's paper.
Sure.
Okay, let's look for recent ones. And we want something in a physics journal. Or let's say in the last 4 years.
But I think we're going off topic now.
We are,
I'm
so
happy for you
we can end it here. We can end it here if you want. But
yeah, sure. It was good. It was good to talk to you anyway.
Likewise, thanks for being here, Benjamin.
No problem. Take care. Bye bye.
So it's been cited in the last few years. It's been cited a lot by Dean Radin himself. There is a paper that cites it, the role of quantum mechanics in cognition-based evolution, but this doesn't seem to be talking about. Yeah. There's a paper that is on the preprint server with Stuart Kaufman and Dean Radin, but I don't think that was actually published. It just doesn't look like it was. I don't actually see publications in physics journals. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's bring up another guest. The layman, how's it going?
Hey, how are you? Can you hear me pretty good?
Yeah, I can. Do you believe in God?
I do.
Okay. And which
Let
one?
me see. I might be having a little bit of trouble hearing you, and it might be on my end. Can you?
No. It might just be me. Is my audio okay?
I can hear you. Yeah, I think I can hear you pretty good right
Yeah.
now.
So just to be clear, which God do you believe in? I just don't want to make any assumptions.
So, I mean, that's actually a good question. I'm a mystic, so I believe that most of the religions of the world, at least the ones that I've studied, have fundamental similarities and only superficial differences. So, I mean, I guess since I'm a Westerner, I pull from the Christian wisdom tradition most often.
Okay. And would you say that like you believe that Jesus rose from the dead, say?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say that okay. Would you say that, and just to get a framing of your view, how would you interpret the Christian Bible? Would you interpret it as mostly true with some stories that are not true? Would you interpret it as mostly false with some important lessons? Would you would you interpret it as completely true, as completely false? What's your view there?
Well, of course, anybody who's really dived into the Bible knows it's a library. It's not like a Harry Potter book. So there are histories, there are myths, there are poetries that all have to be kind of interpreted in various different ways. So I don't know if I would just call the entire book true as if it's one book, but I would say that there are truths and deep meaning. I mean, even you said are some of them stories. Stories are true. So I think The Lion King is true. It's not true in the correspondence sense that there's cats running around making kingdom hierarchies, but there's deep truths that are
Are you a fan of Jordan Peterson?
I love Jordan Peterson. Yeah, he's great. What's wrong with do you like him?
Not particularly. Okay, so I kind of have a sense for your views, at least at a surface level. So why don't you tell me what would be like the most compelling reason you could give me that would make me agree with you, that would convince me to agree with you?
Well, I have no idea. You being convinced is your psychological state, and I don't know your history.
Well, yeah. So like, what's the most compelling argument you could present?
To be honest, I think that it's analytical idealism right now. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that idealism is the only reduction base in metaphysics without that isn't really challenged for being like incoherent in principle. And so when I think of idealism, and by analytical idealism, I mean that what is fundamental is consciousness, and everything emerges kind of out of this conscious fundamental structure. That fundamental consciousness would have all of the omni properties classically attributed to God.
So
in
I have
that
two
way,
questions. First
sure.
is, I have not heard the claim that all other metaphysical views are incoherent. That sounds like a tough burden to show, but if you want to attempt that, by all means. And second, I don't see how, even if you grant that consciousness is the fundamental substrate, I don't see how that gets you to omni properties whatsoever.
Nice. So if all latent or expressed potentials for knowledge were in one being, would you call that one being omniscient? Would that be fair, or would that be a stretch? And the thing is, I'm not trying to debate necessarily here. I do want to
wait a minute. So can you repeat the claim? So it sounds like you're making the first half of the syllogism. So do you want to just express the syllogism and we can talk about it?
No, I don't argue in syllogisms because they don't work. And so for me,
it just helps formalize the point that you're trying to make.
Right, and I don't argue formally. I'd rather have a conversation, if possible.
Well, okay, then can you just repeat yourself so then I can make sense of what you were saying?
Sure, yeah. So if all knowledge is either latent or expressed within one being, would it be fair to call this being omniscient?
Perhaps, but I don't see a reason to think that analytic idealism gets you to the position that all knowledge, latent or expressed, exists in that fundamental conscious substrate. Why would I think that? Why would anyone think that?
Fair enough. So if something is the reduction base in metaphysics, it means that everything reduces to this one thing, right? So your knowledge, which appears to be separate
only
from
things
my
that
knowledge,
exist, by the way, right?
Well, there is no thing that doesn't exist. If it's a thing, then that means we foregrounded it. So even a concept would exist.
Well, I mean, consider this. Like, suppose that you had a computer that, this is an analogy or a metaphor or whatever. Suppose that you had a computer that contained all human knowledge, right? There are things that humans know and things that humans don't know. For example, we don't know how to prove the Riemann hypothesis, for example. We don't even know if the Riemann hypothesis is provable. So it's not clear to me that even if the fundamental substrate of reality was consciousness, that consciousness, whatever it might be, would contain knowledge about a proof of the Riemann hypothesis.
I think that this is I think that's a really intelligent critique, actually. But would you agree that it had at least the latent potential, right? Because
I have no idea what you
but
mean by that.
well, if you like Aristotle talked a lot about latent potentials. He said that a tree, for instance, is potentially a ship. A tree is potentially a boat. And so, would we say that a tree, which never becomes a boat, ever had the potential to become one?
That depends on your view on necessity and on contingency, I think. Um,
There you go.
I'm not too sold
And
on the
so
existence of potentiality, by the way, unless you just mean some sort of like possible worlds analysis. I'm not
that's
too
fair.
sold on like the existence of potentiality in some sense.
Sure. Even if we were to go with, materialism, which is something like what's fundamental is, you know, a series of quantities, whether it's, vibrations, amplitudes, or frequencies, whatever you want to say. Even if what's fundamental or what's irreducible is something like that, we would have to say that um, uh, that substrate has the latent potential for everything that we perceive today. Is that
I'm
fair?
no, I just I don't think that the language of potentials just seems like it doesn't contain any meaning. Like it doesn't actually like it doesn't tell us anything about what we're talking about. Like things either
Hmm.
are a certain way or they aren't a certain way. Now, you could study the entire history of spacetime, the entire history and future of spacetime, and examine the way things are at different moments in time. But as far as
Well,
I'm
if
concerned,
you,
saying like, oh, a thing could be this, even if it never will be, like, what is that trying to convey?
so it's strange to me, and maybe it's because I'm not understanding what you mean. You're saying that the word potential is meaningless to you?
In a like, I'm saying that the word potential, insofar as it has like some sort of ontological status or some sort of metaphysical significance, that seems like, I mean, we can use the word potential to like in like a colloquial sense, that's fine. But like in the kind of status that you're giving it, it just seems not like a useful notion.
Hmm. So whatever is fundamental, it would be very strange to say that whatever is fundamental lacks the potential to enact what we observe. And because I just want to make sure
I
we're on the same
what do you
track. It would be very strange to say that whatever started the universe had no capacity to do so, had no
the
potential to do so.
so the
Because
way
the only thing without potential is nothing.
this I mean, well, that's a metaphysical claim, right? But this seems this notion of potential seems very predicated on like a presentist view of time, which I just completely reject.
So can you unpack further why uh, the presentist view of time is necessitated?
Well, so if you're talking about like a thing potentially having a certain way, that means that you're giving a preference to the way it is now and considering the way it could be at some point in the future. Um, I suppose it doesn't explicitly necessitate presentism. It necessitates some sort of like um, preferred. What would be the right word? It's not quite presentism because presentism distinguishes the present from both the past and the future, whereas here it's just distinguishing the present from the future.
Well, I mean,
But
yeah,
suffice it to say,
I think we can make it a lot simpler if we just say, were you always having this experience, talking to me? Were you always engaged in this conversation?
that's what I mean by by like sort of necessitates some sort of presentism. The way
Okay.
that I understand the universe is not as there are moments of time that flow from one to the next, and like that moment of time is real for an instant, and then the next moment of time is real, and so a billion years ago I didn't exist. Like that's not like that's not a particularly you know empirically or
I
perhaps even
also deny
rationally.
that. I also deny that time and space are fundamental. If that's where
Well,
you're going.
perhaps you can. I'm not making that claim. What I am saying is that we have good reason to think that any sort of like preferred existence of like distinct and distinctive now, that's essentially ruled out by experiment.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, but I mean, regardless of whether or not time or space or our perceptions are fundamental. One thing that we can say is that we are experiencing the illusion of time or the
Yeah,
illusion
sure.
of passing states. So even if we're experiencing that, that means that, so anything that we experience exists, at least in the sense that we are able to foreground it, put a label on it, and background things that are not it, such that we can speak about it.
Yeah, sure. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay,
I would
fair.
just
So,
I would
so,
just
so, so
index those experiences to particular moments of space-time or events as particular events in space-time. And I wouldn't say
mhm.
that like they didn't exist. They're like an event is a place and a time, right? Um, and so yeah, they exist in space-time at at that event, at that place and time. It just seems like we're giving some weird, I don't know. It seems like this notion of like it could potentially be this way. Well, you don't have to think about what about like the way the potential ways things could be. Just look at the whole of space-time. You can at least you can imagine doing that from like a God's eye view or something like that.
Sure.
And then you can just consider how are things at different moments and at different places. There's no
Okay.
potential
Yeah.
there. It's just the state of affairs.
Right. But if you're looking at how things are in different ways and in different places, right? The word different, all by itself, the fact that you're able to recognize differences implies the potential for you to actualize or recognize those differences. Otherwise, it would just be one static thing.
I don't know what
Am I
that
wrong?
means. I have no idea. Can you rephrase perhaps?
Yeah, I'm saying whenever you recognize that there's a difference between thing A and thing B,
Hmm.
then there is some potential within you that is being expressed in order to accomplish that goal,
It
right?
if a potential is expressed, you're just saying it's just there. It's not. Like it seems like I can come to the same conclusion and just say I am expressing this difference, and I don't need to invoke the language or the metaphysics of potential whatsoever.
Okay. Uh, all right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is something that I usually don't get as much pushback on. But once again, I don't necessarily formalize. Maybe that's one of the weak points in my tendency not to build syllogisms. But what I'm saying, what I'm suggesting is if consciousness, which, according to David Chalmers, consciousness is what it is like to be, right? If it is like something to be this fundamental thing, and then you and I develop the illusion of separation through obfuscations from that fundamental layer, then it seems to me plausible, and it has seemed plausible to me since that it's fine to call that fundamental being God.
Well, I mean, perhaps. Like if, well, okay, actually, let me think about this. So suppose that we take
And the thing is, look,
idealism.
before you continue, and I apologize for
Sure.
interrupting. Like the God that I believe in is not an agent. I've tried my best to make to say, okay, God is an agent. God judges. God cares about this and that, and has moral.
Does
And
it have a does it
I
have an individual consciousness?
well, no one has consciousness. Consciousness is something you are, not something you have. It's the
Okay.
only thing that you can't have.
Let me rephrase. Is it a
Yeah.
consciousness?
Yes, God is a
That seems
consciousness.
like that's what's necessary for it to be an agent, right?
Well, I think in order to be an agent, you have to have a mind. So a mind is something you can have. I don't believe
Oh,
God has a
okay.
mind.
So
Mind and consciousness are different,
I
subtly.
don't I, I don't see how you can have consciousness without a mind.
So I think consciousness, simpliciter, would just be pure subjectivity or pure being without an object distinction. With minds, there's always a subject-object distinction. There's the agent and the arena.
I don't know what it means to have. I don't know what it means to just have pure subjectivity. Then, I just don't know what that means. I have no conception of it.
Your mind is something that develops. It's what you use to differentiate white from black, here from there, me from you. But prior to that, there was, and I think, in the womb, when you're a baby in the womb, you don't know the difference between you and your mother, or that there's a
I
such
also
thing as
don't think.
mother.
I mean, I guess it depends on where you are in the fetal development, but I think there's at least a period in the fetal development where there just is no consciousness. There is no like at all.
Well, I think you might be confusing consciousness with signs of consciousness.
I mean, how, how would we figure out if there's consciousness for something? I mean, like, I can infer that I have consciousness because I'm the one doing the consciousness, right? And then I look at you and I'm like,
I'm going to ask you something.
Yeah, sure.
I love this conversation, by the way. This conversation is awesome. Well, no, go on. I don't want to interrupt. I'm sorry.
Look, so clearly, like, I've self-evident reason to believe that I am indeed conscious. I indeed exist. And then I look at you and I look at me and I'm like, you're basically like me. And you do all the things that I do, and the things that I do because I have consciousness. So I can like infer that you have consciousness, that you are consciousness, if you prefer that language. That there's a conscious entity existing within you, right? I can't make that inference for rocks. I can't make that inference for zygotes. So, on what grounds do I have to believe that, a zygote and a rock have this subjective self, or subjective sense rather?
I think that's a fair question, but it's a question that presumes the direction is outward when asking the question instead of inward. So one of the questions they ask in relevance theory, which was developed in 1986, is how do we say so little and yet understand so much, right? So when you say you see, if I put my hand on the fire, I react the same way you would react if you put your hand on the fire. And so it's safe to assume that I'm having a conscious experience, right? Well, the thing is, when you put your hand on a fire, whatever you say, whether that's just ouch, or whether you just scream, or whether you, God damn it, whatever you say, it doesn't accurately express the feeling. It doesn't accurately express what you went through, right?
Sure.
And so to say that based on my expression, you can assume that I'm having feelings, well, yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, but it doesn't really capture the depth of what it is to be conscious and have conscious experiences. So something that I say to people is, if you take like electrostatic discharge, lightning. Lightning is an example of electrostatic discharge in the air, hitting a certain level to where it produces lightning. But just because you see lightning doesn't mean that that's the only example of electrostatic pressure in the air, right? So electrostatic pressure can exist without lightning, just like combustion can exist without fire. So it's not that whenever you see fire, that's the only time where there's combustion. So similarly, whenever you see a brain, or you see, a human being interacting with you, I think you would be making the same mistake to suggest that whenever you see an active brain, that's the only place consciousness can exist. Consciousness is filtered through the brain. It's filtered.
Suppose that you had no experience with electricity whatsoever, and you saw lightning for the first time. But you had seen lightning a lot. That's the only experience with electricity that you would have had. You would have been well justified to say, yeah, this lightning thing, that is what electrostatic discharge is. Now, later on, when you make some new discoveries, maybe you rub your feet on the carpet or something, or you play around with various chemicals and you mix them in certain ways. Maybe then you make an additional discovery and you say, there's this other thing that seems to be described in the same way, but it's not lightning. And then you would come to the conclusion, yeah, okay, I was wrong before when I said lightning was all there was to electrostatic discharge. It seems like we're not past the point where we say, yes, other humans who look like me and who interact the same way I do, those things, I can say, yeah, those things have consciousness, or those things are consciousness. It doesn't seem like we're at that point where we can say we've made other discoveries, and therefore, we should have broadened our notion of consciousness.
Well, I think the problem with consciousness, and the reason I'm still on the bandwagon that consciousness is extraordinarily simple. A lot of people in the cognitive sciences would disagree with me and say it's the most complicated thing you could possibly study. But I think the reason is because we're trying to study it from the having mode instead of the being mode. And so there's kind of a modal confusion. I think you understand consciousness just as well as a housefly does in the being mode, right? Consciousness is something that you can only understand by being it. You can't have it. It's the only thing you can't have. And you can't have it for the same reason that a fire doesn't burn itself or a tooth doesn't bite itself. The tongue can't taste itself. I guess kind of in a sense you can. But you know what I'm saying? Your left eye can't look into your left eye. It has to look at other things besides itself. And so consciousness is something where like being seems to be like the the kind of the be all end all. But I mean, what I say is consciousness doesn't ever seem to develop. What you're aware of develops, but awareness itself doesn't. Right?
I'm not sure if I grant that there is a notion of being aside from the experiences of that being.
There's nothing to being except for, so I mean, like
whether internal or external experiences, I should say.
So you're saying like maybe in a sensory deprivation chamber you just cease to exist?
I would have a hard time saying that somebody who is incapable of forming memories, is incapable of having internal thoughts, and is incapable of having senses. I would have a hard time saying that that thing is conscious.
You'd have a hard time saying that. Okay, so let's. Would you mind if we tried like an experiment? Oh, sorry about that. Would you mind if we tried like a phenomenological experiment here?
Sure.
Okay. Do you have an object that's like around you on your desk or wherever you're? A water bottle. Okay. Give us some descriptions of the water bottle.
It's blue and hard and metal. It opens and closes. It holds water.
Okay.
To my right.
Perfect. Excellent. So you are aware of that water bottle, it's safe to say, right?
Yep.
Okay. So since you are aware of the water bottle, and since you're able to tell me that you're aware of the water bottle, would it be safe to say that you are aware of your own awareness?
I can be, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so if you weren't
that's like
aware
an extra
of your own
layer that you have to that I'm like actively thinking about, but sure.
Yeah. And so if you're able to tell me I am aware of the water bottle, that means you're aware of that because you told me about it, right? So we're at the point now of self-awareness. You're not only aware of the water bottle, you're aware of something called awareness.
Well, yeah. So what that seems to me like is it seems like there's, if you take like a physicalist point of view of, whatever that might be, one plausible explanation is that you have one part of the brain that's processing data from the external world about this water bottle, and then the other part of the brain is observing internally what the first part of the brain was doing.
That's fair, but that's a theory. I mean, if we're talking,
but it's a potential explanation, is what I'm saying. It seems like that would be consistent. That explanation would be entirely consistent with my view that like consciousness ceases to exist if you don't have any internal or external experiences.
No, that's fair, but because we can never test that, and one thing I love about phenomenology is it's about what you feel, what you can prove right now immediately. Like it's almost like the cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am, going down to exactly what you and I can prove experimentally right now on the show. Right.
Well, sure. So we're both talking about theories, though, right?
No, which is totally fair, because I believe that when you die, the objective pole of experience melts away, and you're left in a state of pure subjectivity. You believe that.
Elaborate at all on what pure subjectivity is?
It's subjectivity without an object distinction. So right now, there is an agent-arena relationship. I'm the agent. My room is the arena. I have my microphone. That's a part of the arena. I have a camera, right? But I think what the scientific community has been trying to tell us for the last couple of decades is that relations precede relata. I mean, that's still a quote from Carlo Rovelli of loop quantum gravity theory, borrowed by the likes of Ian McGilcris and others.
A metaphysical claim, which I'm on the fence about.
I mean, before we say it's a metaphysical claim, I think you would agree, though, that the microphone in front of my face is a low resolution image of what's actually happening. Like if we were to zoom into a higher resolution, we'd of course see atoms and molecules floating.
That's under my view. Under your view, no, it's exactly what's there, right?
No, that's not my view.
You're an idealist, right? An idealist is that the mind is all that's genuinely there, the fundamental object.
See, idealism has a lot under its umbrella, right? I believe that pure subjectivity is fundamental. without
Okay.
an object distinction
So-
at all. So the reason that I see this object, which is, in this case, my microphone, is because all concepts are reflections of my own limitations. I'm a human being.
Sure.
So I can only see a small fragment of the light spectrum. I only have a certain depth perception.
Yep.
There are things I can't see through or see beyond. My hearing, my sense of taste, my smell, all of those are reflections of the limitations of my
Sure.
biology.
I agree.
Right. And so they're very low resolution images. They help me accomplish my evolution.
I still have no idea what pure subjectivity is.
Okay, so we're getting there with the water bottle. So you said
Right.
that you believed in this water bottle, and you
Yep.
believe in awareness, and that awareness and the water bottle are different things. Is that fair so far?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Which one are you more confident in? If I were to say, are you more confident that there is a water bottle, or are you more confident that there is awareness?
I don't think I would say that I'm more or less confident about either. I would say that I'm equally confident in both.
Okay, so could you be dreaming right now? In which case there is not a water bottle there.
Sure.
So if you could be dreaming right now, would you still be aware?
I would not be aware of the water bottle, right?
No, I mean, but we're not talking about aware of. We're talking about aware.
Oh,
right? So
okay.
If you,
So
whether
sure.
you're dreaming or awake,
So no,
whether you're dreaming or
that's a fair
awake,
point. So I could be mistaken. My senses could be misleading me about that water bottle actually being there. That's absolutely fair.
Okay, good. Now, can awareness be misleading you? Can you actually not be aware and just be under the illusion that you're aware? Does that make any sense?
That seems possible, yeah.
How does that seem possible? That's where I get hung up. I think that awareness is something you can take to the bank.
Well, I mean, look, if it's the case that awareness is just an internal sensory, I'll put it as it's metaphorical language, an internal sensory experience. Namely, it is, you have some sense data that's coming from inside of you rather than from outside of you. Well, it's totally plausible that sense data could be misled. Like, actually, let me give you an experience. Let me give you an example. Suppose, for example, that that somebody poked in your brain, and like poked the back part of your brain, so that that's where your occipital lobe is, so that it triggered seeing red, right? And so you would, but you would be mistaken if you said I'm aware of red. Because there is no red, right? The red's not really there. Your brain is picking up on your brain is being misled about what it's again in this physicalist view, your brain would be being misled about what it's detecting in itself.
Well, if that's the case, then we're misled every time we see red. So it's important to make a distinction between the two forms of existence, because existence has an etymological definition and kind of a scientific one. So the etymology of exist means ex, which means out, and sist, meaning to stand. So if something stands out, it exists. So if you're listening to my voice, you have backgrounded other noises, and you have foregrounded my voice in order to pay attention. That means I exist, at least on the etymological sense. But then there's another form of existence.
Isn't as useful.
Well, I mean, I think etymology is very useful, but you would at
it's
least
useful.
say,
I wouldn't use it. I wouldn't use it to make a philosophical point, though.
Why not in this instance?
Because it could just be a historical fluke that's where the word comes from.
Well, no, I mean, even beyond the historical fluke, do you understand what I'm saying? Like if I say, if I'm foregrounding something, which means, and this is salience landscape theory, this is cognitive science, right? Like, because human beings, we get to choose what we pay attention to. One of the greatest functions of human beings is knowing what to ignore.
But I don't think that makes the thing that you ignore or the thing that you're not ignoring exist in any different sense.
So are you saying that you only define existence in terms of Kant's noumena, which no one has access to?
I mean, I can't be certain that anything exists besides myself, right? besides my own
No. I think we agree then, because what you're saying is
but
what we knew.
that doesn't mean I don't have a justification for believing that other things do exist.
No, I mean, we have consensus reality, and then we have personal phenomena, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're saying we should just do away with personal phenomena and say that that doesn't exist, I don't think that that's helpful, right?
No, I don't think that we should do away with personal phenomena, but we need to make the distinction between what that look. So when we are aware that we're seeing red, right? If I see a red thing and I say, "Hey, I'm seeing red," what that's pointing to is, at least in the theory that I'm proposing, what's that pointing to is that one part of my brain noticed that another part of my brain was getting signals and interpreted those signals as meaning there's a red thing outside that's sending those signals to my brain. That's like that. When we say that we're seeing something, the implication is that there's something to be seen, if you will, something outside of us to be seen. And so it just seems like your awareness could be misled in just the same way that your senses could.
Your awareness, and that's the thing.
I should say the aboutness of your awareness, perhaps.
The aboutness of awareness. Okay, I guess that makes.
But then what is awareness if not just aboutness, right?
Awareness is the potential for aboutness. So consciousness. No, if I were to say this, if I were to say consciousness is that. Let me see. Consciousness is that the excitations of which are experiences. Consciousness is that the exit is the thing that that has excitations which we call experiences. It's almost like the vibration of a string. When the string stops vibrating, there's still the string. The vibrations of the string are, what we call.
I think I know
things.
what you're trying to convey. My understanding and my the way I think about consciousness is that consciousness is the excitations. It's the collection of all of them.
And what causes consciousness in your view? And as a materialist, you said you're a materialist.
I said I'm a physicalist.
Physicalism,
which is
okay.
close.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite the same thing, but close.
And I might have physicalism off, because I when I hear physicalism, I think that you're someone who believes that what is fundamental are quantities of some kind, and those quantities are amplitudes, frequencies, and vibrations.
So physicalists, at least the form of physicalism I take, perhaps there are physicalists that take that position, but the form of physicalism I take is that whatever is fundamental is describable in some sort of physics way. Now, it might be that matter is fundamental. It might be that like there's something more fundamental, like some universal wave function or something, or it might be that there is maybe it's all strings, like whatever it might be, or maybe it's quantum fields. It's just that whatever's fundamental is that you can do physics to it.
Gotcha. And why would you assume that that's the case? For me, when I hear that, it seems very human centric. Like, why would monkeys?
It's been wildly successful.
Why would evolved monkeys have accidentally stumbled across what's the fundamental nature of reality? It just seems very unlikely.
Well, to be fair, I don't think physics is like some like human centric thing. I think physics, the notion of physics, whether it's reductive physics or not, the notion of physics is just kind of describing things in a precise way, in ways that you don't
think that physics is describing things which are biased in favor of the human imagination, or it's definitely biased in favor of
there are unknown unknowns, I suppose. But the reason I take physicalism seriously is because it's been wildly successful, right? Like it's just like that's an empirical fact. It's been wildly successful at it makes predictions that come true, right?
Well, it doesn't make metaphysical predictions. I mean, the physicists are metaphysically neutral.
Well, sure.
So, I mean,
okay. I would bet that the vast majority of physicists are physicalists or materialists. But I mean, the point is that if we're able to use this method to argue for truth or to predict true things, then that is really compelling evidence that the
But I
method
mean,
points to something fundamental.
I don't know. I don't think that. I think physicists are interested in the way things work, not in what's fundamentally true.
You're talking to the
Am I
wrong
wrong?
physicists. Yeah, you're talking to the wrong physicists.
Gotcha, gotcha. So you think that physicists are interested in metaphysics?
Well, to a
And
certain
like,
extent. I
because,
mean, like,
because I mean, and the thing is, before you continue, I am biased. So I'm someone in this conversation who's I'm very proud to be educated on this matter. I take very seriously the fact that I'm not a physicist. At the same time, I see science as a pragmatic discipline. The reason that the scientists kind of abandon philosophy is because philosophers would, argue about whether holes exist from the armchair. The physicists wanted to know that the scientists wanted to know what actually works, not what's fundamentally true.
yeah. So I mean, there are. Okay, so there's the day job of a physicist, right? And for the
Yeah.
vast majority of physicists, that doesn't involve doing philosophy much at all, or metaphysics really at all, right? Because you're tightening some screws, or you're building a detector, or you're doing some sort of computation, whatever. Like that's the day job. But like the reason why people get into physics, at least many of the people that I've spoken with, is because they want to know what's there. They want to know what's actually there, right? And so you do have a fairly small contingent of physicists. These are people who have PhDs in physics, who work in physics departments, who are studying like you might call it like foundations of physics, or they're studying like the fundamentals of quantum mechanics or whatever, to try to really get at like what kinds of things can we actually say that we can derive about the world based off of the things that we can test about the world. And these are things that people are interested in doing. No, it's not a big contingent, because doing philosophy tends to not pay the bills very well. There's not a lot of jobs for physicists who do philosophy, but they do exist.
That's fair. I mean, what do you think? And I know we've gotten a little bit off track. I'll ask you one more like physics question.
Sure.
Are you familiar with the work of Nima Arkani Hamed and
I am,
energy
yeah.
physics?
I actually met him. But
no freaking way! Can
well,
you tell me about that?
So it was just like a short, like a brief, so I went to one of his talks. It happens to be the case that one of his students was on my dissertation committee.
Wow.
So, and his student invited him to give a talk at my university, and so I talked to him after the talk, basically.
Dude, that is freaking fascinating. I wish that
character.
He would. And I know he's been begged, like people beg him, like, can you please write a book that is digestible to the general public? And he's way too busy with his. Right. It's like every time I try to listen to one of his lectures, like 90% over my head and like 10% like, okay. But what do you think he means by space and time are doomed? It kind of became popular in physics to say space time are doomed. I think Nima says space and time have no operational meaning beyond the Planck scale, things like that.
Yeah. So the claim here that's being made is something like space and time are not fundamental, or space time is not fundamental, and rather it's emergent. And that you could still do physics without even a notion of locality or a notion of space time. Now, it's contentious. Like, I'm kind of on the fence about it. But suffice it to say, like that's consistent with physicalism, right? Which is why I think physicalism is a bit broader than materialism. But yeah, I mean, like Nima does say that. The reason why Nima says that is because his amplituhedron stuff is very non-space-timey, and being the proponent of that kind of model, that kind of method, of course he's going to be like, well, my thing is right, so that means that the implications of my thing are that space-time is not fundamental, and my thing is like, so there's a bit of bias on his end, but like he's a bright guy, so maybe he's right.
Sure. But the thing is, I mean, things like this give a nerd like me some comfort. I'm like, you know what? How much time does it take to be aware? It doesn't seem like it requires a temporal dimension. What shape is awareness? Awareness doesn't have a shape. And if something doesn't have a shape, it doesn't necessarily have boundaries, at least on a phenomenological level. And so I'm like, okay, if we rethink this God idea and take it away from the anthropomorphized God of the Old or New Testament, let's say, even though I think that those anthropomorphizations were useful in their time, because I I kind of hate the correspondence theory. I'm like, what are you saying you're in touch with if you think that your phenomenal experience matches reality in some way? I think that's naive. But I think that gives a lot of room for awareness being fundamental, and human beings are just kind of a temporary obfuscation from of this fundamental consciousness, and that when we die, the objective pole of experience, which the brain is for, that just goes away, and we return to the pure subjectivity that we came from.
So, just a quick point, and then about what you said at the beginning about like awareness not having a place or like taking a time. Like, it's not clear to me that awareness doesn't take time, right? Like, there are a lot of things that like humans aren't aware of as like taking time, but that's just because our brains don't work very fast, or at least it's plausibly because our brains don't work very fast. So like,
you keep making a subtle shift though from awareness to awareness of. Being aware of does take time, right? Me being aware of what you just said.
You're right. That is a subtle shift, but I don't think that there's. I still don't understand what awareness is sans aboutness, right?
Well, I think maybe because awareness implicit is not a thing, and we're used to talking about things. Dr. Ian McGilchrist wrote a book called "The Matter with Things," right? And it's
okay. So then what is it?
In order to be a thing, it has to be something that you can grasp. So hands are very important. Like when you see my hands are raised. That means I'm not going to stab you with something, right? So we like having things. Things have definite boundaries. They have spatiotemporal locations. They have hardness or softness. They have a taste, a flavor, a smell, and we want all those things when we study. But when we're talking about awareness itself, right? Awareness itself is what draws those boundaries.
But what is awareness itself? Like, I still don't know what it is.
I think awareness is being. Awareness is what it is like to be, according to Chalmers, who came up with the hard problem.
But that's an aboutness. What
No.
it is like is an aboutness. It's about being.
Well, I mean, I think awareness does have like this self-reflective property. It's like a recursive reflective kind of property where you can say, I am aware that I am aware that I am aware. So awareness can objectify itself, like we did in the experiment with your water bottle. It was like, yeah, I'm aware of my awareness, and my awareness is aware of my awareness. You can continue doing that. But the fact that awareness has the ability to be aware of itself, I think that should kind of give us a hint. Like nothing else has the ability to do that.
Nothing else has the ability to be about itself? Why not?
Well, what else is about itself?
A book can be about itself.
Well, a book is about an idea. I mean, so this book, for instance, first edition, Animal Farm. Can you see me visually?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. I'm holding a first edition Animal Farm.
That's kind of neat.
Freaking dope. My wife found it, and on my personal YouTube channel, we're going through Animal Farm. We're in chapter 5.
No free clout. No, it's fine. You're fine.
No free clout. Subscribe to my channel. No. So this book is not about this book. It's not. I don't open this and say
the book's not book Animal Farm isn't about that book. But in principle, a book could be about itself, right?
I don't think so, because a book is so. Okay, let's imagine this. This is what scientists like C.S. Peirce and William James. This is what the American pragmatists hated, getting lost in conversations like this. But my philosophical bone wants to go into it. What would it be like if this book was about this book?
So I can give you a smaller example. A sentence can be about itself. This sentence is true. That's a sentence that's about itself, right?
Well, is it though, or is it about truth?
Well, no, it's about itself, and it's about its truth value. It includes itself in itself, right?
Well, it includes. I mean, I guess you can say that it includes itself, but what a sentence is about doesn't necessarily hinge on what it includes.
Well, I would say that a sentence can be about many things simultaneously. And if one of the things that it's about is itself, well, sure, then it's about itself and other things.
A sentence can be about itself. Yeah, you can start a sentence by saying this sentence.
That's what I had in mind for a book, by the way. a book that's about not just like a single sentence, but like that kind of self-referential
yeah.
thing. Like it,
Clive
like
Barker. Clive Barker, if you're into like dystopian literature, namely like horror, like Hellraiser and the Hellbound Heart, that's Clive Barker stuff. He does a lot of stuff where he writes about his writing process, where he writes about the book, don't open the book type of thing. So yeah, I think you have a point there.
But okay, so anyway, so I was taught it's not clear to me that awareness is something that doesn't take time, and similarly, it's not clear to me that awareness is not like located somewhere. I mean, like,
see, but the thing is, I think when you say that, you're abandoning phenomenology, which is fine.
well, I mean, if I say awareness is located in the brain, like that seems to be entirely consistent with my experience.
Well, no. How can you experience the brain? Your brain that you've never seen and that you've never. I mean, it's like you're saying this.
Arguably, that's all I'm experiencing, right?
Well, I mean, arguably, if you abandon phenomenology, which you're always allowed to do, and I'm not saying it's bad. We should listen to the scientists. I'm a cognitive science student. I love cogsci. So I'm just saying, for the moment, phenomenology is about what you're directly experiencing right now. And that's the reason, like when we take the water bottle and we say, I'm aware of the water bottle. Okay, now erase the water bottle and let's just focus on awareness.
Well, but hold on. So, and I know that this hasn't always been the case, by the way. I know that ancient Egyptians were weird about this, but like based off of how I was raised and the way that I think about the world, my center of self is behind my eyes, right? That's where like I picture myself being, right? And I imagine that most people probably are the same way. So like
I think I'm the same way.
So in some sense, like that is exactly that's a place, right? That's a place that I am directly experiencing my awareness being.
See, and now imagine that the space inside your room became conscious. Very, very weird idea, but just the space in the room. If the space in your room became conscious, it would have that same illusion. It would say, okay, if I would describe myself, I would say there are 4 walls. I have 4 walls. I have a floor. I'm basically a box. A box is my shape. Well, in reality, the empty space in your body, and your body is mainly empty space. The empty space in your body is connected to the empty space in the room, and the space in that room cannot be held by the walls. As a matter of fact, the walls are mostly empty space. So the space in your body / in the room, well, the space in your body / in the room is also connected to the space outside and in the galaxy and in the whole universe. Do you agree with that?
I mean, you're just saying that like there are no hard boundaries if you zoom in enough, right?
Well, no, I'm saying there needs to be some justification for privileging the resolution that you choose to call reality. Because what you're seeing, if you're seeing my image, is a low resolution image.
I mean, the justification is, I mean, as you say, it's phenomenology. It's a direct experience that like I perceive myself as being behind my eyes. And not like a mile behind my eyes, just like, a bit behind my eyes.
You perceive yourself as being behind your eyes.
Yeah, like that is where my sense of self like it just seems self-evidently the case that that's where I am. I'm not in my hands. I'm not over there. I don't know if you can see me. I'm behind my eyes.
Yeah,
which is why I
can't
protect.
see.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's why I protect the place behind my eyes, because that's where I am. If I'm about to fall on the ground, I'm not going to protect my kneecaps because that's not where I am. I'm behind my eyes. I'm going to protect that place.
No, I could come up with arguments for the sake of arguments on that point, but I think you make a good point, because I also feel like I also kind of feel like, if I get into my, because I think everyone has flirted with physicalism and materialism. I've abandoned it, but I guess there's this sense that you're behind your eyes, and I guess now it's my turn to abandon phenomenology. Do you understand transjective relationships?
I don't even know what transjective means. I know what bijective means.
So there's okay, no, and it's fair that you don't. This is Dr. John Vervaeke. Are you familiar with John
Never
Vervaeke,
heard of him.
University of Toronto? He's starting
No.
he's starting to do his rounds. I hope he ends up on Joe Rogan or something. Very brilliant guy.
Oh no, let's not do that.
Oh, you don't like Joe Rogan? I just know Joe Rogan introduces a lot of people to the wider, to a wider audience. I think he deserves a wider audience.
Okay,
But
fair.
but I think he coined this term, the transjective. Some properties are not subjective or objective, but they take place as a relationship between the subject and the object. So the color black, my microphone is black, but black is not an objective property of the camera, nor is it a subjective property of your experience. It transcends the subject-object distinction and is a relationship between your eyes and
Okay, no,
the
that's
object.
fair. That's fair.
Okay.
So I'm sympathetic to the view, but in principle, one could just say that's just subjective, because it depends on the presence of a mind, right? Or the presence of a subject, I should say. That blackness.
The problem with calling it subjective is that you can't change it. If it were subjective, you would be able to change it to green.
I don't think that's true. Subjective doesn't mean it's subject to change. Subjective things can be universal, right? Like you could even, and in fact, this is an argument that I've made a lot.
No. So like, it is subjective that that I think ice cream is delicious, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I can eat ice cream and just decide that it isn't. You're saying something like that.
Something to that effect, yeah.
Okay, no, and I think that's fair. So you're saying that you're flirting with the concept that seeing black in my microphone might be purely subjective with no objective pole.
I mean, so not to say that there's no objective cause, if that's what you mean by objective pole.
Because that would be like something like solipsism, right?
Yeah, no. Surely there are objective. Well, okay, maybe not surely. I mean, who knows, right? But like I'm absolutely comfortable saying yes, there is an objective cause for the subjective experience, and if that's what you mean by a transjective thing, something with an objective cause and a subjective experience, that's fine. I'm happy with that.
I mean, transjective relationships can add a lot of meaning to your life. Like when you go outside and the sun is warm, and you feel the heat of the sun. The heat, that feeling of warmth is transjective, right? The sun is not hot by itself, right? It's not objectively hot, and it's not subjectively hot. There's a transjective relationship between me and the sun, which causes that feeling of warmth, and it kind of adds to the brilliance of your experience.
So that, I mean, I could see that being at least a useful term to denote things that are like not purely internal and not purely external. I could see why.
Now, my question would be, what isn't? So we recognize, I think, from where in cognitive science right now, I'm in linguistics, and as a subcategory of linguistics, there's acoustic phonetics. So there's articulatory phonetics, auditory phonetics, and acoustic phonetics. And in acoustic phonetics, one of the first things that you learn is that the universe is dead silent, right? So if air molecules move, they go into your ear, your eardrum vibrates, the cochlea translates that vibration into electrical signals, and none of that is sound. Sound appears only in your mind.
Well, yeah, so that's the question. That's a definitional question. If by sound do you mean like whatever is the collective motion of phonons, like in that case, then there's sound everywhere. If by sound you mean like the experience, then yeah, of course that exists only in the mind.
Right. I mean, and the thing is, if there were sound waves, if there were, like all of that, it just gets so human centric. I just want to kind of bundle it all up. I'm like, all of these things are just, human interpretations of consensus reality. But it's like, if we take it that the universe is silent, colorless, tasteless, all of those other things, then I don't know where we get off, suggesting that that consciousness shouldn't be prioritized, or that subjectivity shouldn't be prioritized over objectivity. Objects are clearly things that we make. They're clearly just the human. All objects, all concepts are just human, like reflections of human limitations. The only thing that isn't, the only thing that we share with the animal kingdom is like awareness. Awareness of just
Sure.
depends on your feeding, fighting, fleeing, and reproducing evolutionary chore.
Right. So
And so we shouldn't privilege or prioritize that, it
the
seems.
trouble I have with that view, and like I'm sympathetic to the view that like yeah, like when we look out into space and we see a star, what we're like we're having an experience, and that's what we call a star, right? I'm like, and so the question is there actually something out there, some separate non conscious based thing out there that is causing that experience? And I'm sympathetic to that question. Like it's an interesting question. I don't know if it's a question that we can answer explicitly, like even in principle.
Yeah.
But if we then say, okay, well, suppose that those things don't exist, then it seems like by the same reasoning, I have the exact same justification to suppose that you don't exist. Because you are
And that's
just an
the thing.
experience to me, right?
I think that's the beauty of my take on existence, though, right? Because there is a sense in which it does exist, in the fact that I can see it, the fact that I can foreground it, right? That has to be one of the things we mean by existence. But then when we talk about mind independent existence, right? And my mind is always changing. Like, what right do I have to say that there's not a mind independent reality? If my mind is always not only changing, but transcending itself. It's like my mind doesn't only change, I become more mature. I develop upward. And so I think that there is a mind independent reality. And I think that mind independent reality is pure consciousness.
And I think we might just be back where we started, because I still don't know what pure consciousness is. I still don't know what awareness simpliciter is. And maybe these are just not ideas that can be communicated effectively with English. But the layman, I would love to we should continue this conversation at a later date, but I should move on to another guest. Is that fair?
Okay, no, fair enough. No, I appreciate the conversation. Thanks for bringing me up, man.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for being here, man. He was really chill. I really like that conversation. But I do understand that we were very off topic for the vast majority of the time, so I want to respect the viewer's experience and make sure that we do that. No, he was a pleasant guy. I don't buy idealism really, but he was a pleasant guy and it was an interesting conversation. Oh, we spoke recently, Malik.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So where do you remember what we spoke about?
I do remember, and I have a few points to address now. I'm kind of.
Oh yeah.
you can
Wait,
say-
were you the guy that I asked about the moon being split, and you said that you would look into it?
And I said I don't remember, but I know that I would look into it, if you understand. I don't remember that I talked about it with you specifically, but I
Okay.
know that you talked about it for almost every Muslim you got.
Well, it's because it's the one thing that just seems like it ruins the Quran for me. But anyway,
Okay,
Yeah,
not a problem. Actually, you can say that I read it, or I don't know what's the real word for that. A few arguments to put.
okay. Yeah, so the question is if the moon split, why didn't anybody else write it down?
Okay, now I got a few answers to this question, actually. You can pick whatever you want.
Sure.
So let's start off. The first one is the moon itself, when it split, it wasn't actually in the middle of the sky. And how I say that is that I don't know the source, but I know the story that the moon, when it splits, there was a mountain in between the two parts of the moon, if you understand what I mean.
Sure.
Okay, if there is a mountain in the middle of the two parts, then that means the moon in itself was kind of somehow horizontal, not totally vertical.
The moon is a circle. I don't know how it's
I
horizontal
know
or
what
vertical.
you mean. I don't mean that. You misunderstood
mean?
me. I meant that the moon isn't directly above.
Oh, you mean
a
it was like
person.
near the horizon? Yeah, sure. But
Yeah,
that's
something
actually,
like that.
That's actually more of a problem for you, because then that means
Okay.
that definitely Europeans
Yeah.
or definitely the Chinese would have seen it, because then that means that the moon would have been directly overhead, either in Europe or in China.
No, actually, let me
Yeah,
continue.
it does. Yeah. If the
Uh,
moon is on, if the moon is near the horizon for somebody that's, say, I don't know, in England, then depending on which horizon it's near, it'll either be directly overhead or nearly directly overhead for, say, people to the west, or nearly directly overhead for the people in the east, because the Earth is round.
okay, then let me continue then. Then you can
Okay, yeah, go
address
ahead.
your point, and we can discuss that.
Sure.
Okay, if the moon, I'm not theoretical physicist nor an astrologer. I don't if that's the real word. So I don't really know how the moon or how the way the moon orbits the Earth. But I know that if it's in a horizon, from my perspective, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the horizon can be in 4 directions, I guess. One of
Yep.
them is in the south.
Yeah, well, the horizon is completely surrounding you. Yeah, so north, south, east, and
Yeah,
west.
of course.
Yeah. So, and I guess, do you know where this event took place? Was it like was it in like Arabia somewhere, presumably?
I don't really know where exactly, but it's somewhere around Saudi Arabia,
So like,
somewhere there.
okay, yeah. So the moon tilts. The moon's orbital axis is 5 degrees above and below, and Saudi
Okay.
Arabia. Let's look. Saudi Arabia latitude. Yeah. So Saudi Arabia's latitude is such that, generally speaking, the moon will be never so far south and never so far north. It'll be generally east and west.
Okay, not so south and north. So it's
Yeah, it could be
it
like
should-
a little south and a little north, but not so far either way.
Okay, then it's probably going to be so east or so west, if you
Yep.
understand what I mean.
Sure.
Okay, if it was so west and it was late night, generally it would be more visible to people in somewhere like the two Americas. Not
Well, no, I mean
specifically-
what's the time difference? So, yeah, so it's about 4 hours difference between. Wait, did I do the math right? 360, 45. Sorry. I can just. Yeah, it's about 3 hours difference between Saudi Arabia and England, say. And so if it was southwest, then that would mean that people in England would see it 50 or 45 degrees above the horizon. If roughly 45 degrees above the horizon, if it was on the horizon in Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
Okay. Now that I said that that's the first probably thing I thought of. Okay. Now that I said that it would be in the horizon. So if it was more in the west, that means that places like China and India, for example, won't be able to see it. And if
Yeah,
it
but
was
England would.
more on east side, that's what. Let me continue then.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, if it was more in the west side, then England would see it probably, and China wouldn't. That means that the only country that could see it is these countries. So you don't want to search for China, and the whole thing I'm saying right now is that it was not fully visible to the whole Earth. If you understand what I mean.
I never said it was. I said that depending on what time of day it was, or depending on where in the sky the moon was, it would either be visible to the entirety of Europe, or it would be visible to India and China. Just depends on where, and it's possible it could have been visible to both, depending on if it was directly straight up.
But it was in the late
that
night.
just depends on the day, or depends on the time of day.
Okay. Then what I said is just now we can say that it wouldn't be 100% visible to both. So it would be
Yeah, I
visible
never
to
said
one.
it would be visible to both. It'd be visible to at least one.
Okay. Now that I addressed that, I don't know much further than this. I cannot prove anything here. It's not my area of specialty, I guess. But I can tell you another thing now. Given this information, I told you right now that places like in somewhere a bit Western Europe would see it, or if it was more on the east side, somewhere around China, they would see it. I would want to bring another point that is not really related to this, but I want to give it as an example. What I said in the past conversation, I asked you about, do you think that life emerged uh, by pure chance? And you said yes, didn't you?
I may have said from chemistry, but I
Yeah,
rarely
from
rarely
chemistry
use
by
pure
pure
chance.
chance.
No,
It
well,
was by chemistry.
I don't think that I would use that language, but suppose I did. Sure.
You didn't say that. What you said specifically, that the universe is so big and life is chemistry, and
Oh,
if you
yes.
try the experiment few times, it would work essentially at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Okay. What I want to say here, that what you said is not so further from saying it's by pure chance.
Okay. I mean, if
It
that's how
was
you interpret pure chance, that's
probabilistic.
fine. We can use that interpretation if you'd like.
Okay, it's probability at the end of the day.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, now let's just say something here. The probability of life emerging from chemistry, probably by probability, is too small, and you still believe in it as the
Wait, how
given
do you know it's too
information.
small? How do you know it's too small?
I've searched it in Google, but I don't know. Actually, I don't have a source.
Okay, I mean, like, so suppose for a moment that, I mean, like, we could just, okay, there's a few ways that we could approach this. First, it's not clear to me at all if that anybody's made an accurate estimation of the probability of life emerging. I've seen some very, very improbable numbers, and those numbers generally stem from just the number of possible ways that you could randomly arrange molecules. But that's not how chemistry works. Chemistry is not merely shuffling chemicals. There are chemical bonds that influence behavior. So I suspect that these, like you'll see like 1 in 10 to the 120 or something like this. That number comes from literally just how many ways can you randomly arrange atoms to form a protein. And that's not at all representative of, you know, chemicals. Under that view, the probability of water forming is like 1 in a million or something like that, but or you know, something equally absurd. And we know that water forms super easily. So we have to be more sophisticated with our probabilistic estimates. But even granting that the universe, or that life is so rare in the universe is potentially infinitely large. So as long as there's a non-zero probability in an infinitely large universe, it would happen inevitably.
Okay, now I understand what you say here, and it doesn't really change the thing that I'm actually going for.
Sure.
No matter what, life is still quite rare and probably is so hard to happen.
Why do you think that life is rare?
I guess because a cell coming from a normal chemical reaction is quite hard to happen.
Well, do you just mean that we haven't done it in the 100 year or in the 50 years that we've been trying?
I'm pretty sure that there is no cell have been created from normal chemistry.
Well, I mean, sure, but we've been trying for like 50 years. And we didn't even know about DNA until like 50 years ago, maybe 55 years ago or something, or 60 years ago. So like, it's not so surprising that like we just didn't understand molecular biology like at all 50 years ago. Why would you think that in 50 years we would be able to create life in a laboratory?
I don't think you will ever do something like that. It's
Okay,
it's
would you become an apostate if it happened in 2 years?
You creating life.
Well, not me, but like some scientist somewhere.
Look, if it was like 100% by normal chemistry, not involving any kind of living organism, then I don't think anyone can do it. There is
Okay,
no
if
other
it did happen,
chance.
would you become an apostate?
Well, that's the thing that I'm about to tell you. It's not that if it happened, I will become whatever you said. It will not happen. There is no chance of it
It's
happening.
a hypothetical. It's a hypothetical. If it did happen, would you stop being a Muslim?
I understand if it's hypothetical, but answering this question is not something good for me. It's not something I would even consider to think about, if you understand what I mean.
Okay. No. I actually do understand what you mean. It might be an issue of, yeah, okay, never mind. So anyway, the point is that unless you say it has 0% probability, which I don't know how you would justify that, as long as the universe is sufficiently large, then
I didn't
it
say
would
it's
happen.
0%.
Right,
Look,
right.
I
But
didn't say
so
it's 0%.
so supposing that it's not 0%, which you just said it's not, then that means
Look, man,
that
look,
in a
Blitz, I
sufficiently
don't.
large universe it would happen. That's the law of large numbers.
Okay, you didn't let me finish. I actually want to put a few information on the table so we can discuss them. So let me finish the entire story, then we can discuss it. No, let's just say, like what you said, life is just rare. I don't know how rare it is. You can give me a number if you want. Like, give me a number, the highest number you can even think about.
Let's say 10 to the 50th 1 in 10 to the 50th power.
Okay, that's
Super rare.
Extremely right, a good number. I can work with that. Now, supposedly, you just believe that life did happen with this probability, with this low probability. It did happen by chemistry using this probability, just that. Now, what I want to say and what I want to apply in the moon split here is that the probability of all of England was sleeping, not any other thing, just all of them were dead asleep, is much lesser than what you said.
Okay, no, so you're making a mistake. You're making which is a reasonable mistake to make. So the probability of, let's take this 10 to the 50 number. The probability of life arising on a given planet would be 10 to the 50. But the probability of life arising in the universe, again, supposing the universe is sufficiently large, would be, 99% or something like this. So the point is not that the probability, it may very well be the case that life is quite rare on a given planet. It might not be, but who knows, maybe it is. But life in the universe, regardless of how rare it is on a single planet, it would inevitably occur if the probability is not zero, assuming that the universe is infinitely large. In that case, the probability of life existing is much, much higher than the probability of all of the people being asleep in England.
I'm still sure that you're still using the belief thing I've said the past time. You still believe that the universe is almost infinitely large without having a pure evidence.
Just to be
and
clear,
saying that,
the universe is huge. It is
okay.
like it
You
has.
still, I'm not sure
Like-
if you're using a fallacy here or not, but
Well-
I'm sure you're not discussing the same point I'm telling you. I didn't say the universe isn't huge at all. That didn't happen.
So there's 2 points to be made. One, even if the universe is not infinitely large, the universe is sufficiently large that for any reasonable probability you might estimate, the universe is big enough that you would expect some life to show up. But even if suppose that you like just make up a number that's even smaller than that, well, we do actually have evidence that the universe is infinitely large. We have good reason to think that it is from observational data combined with Occam's razor.
But it's still not an evidence. You still said
It is
we
evidence.
have.
It's not. Maybe it's not proof, but it is evidence.
Okay, it's not a proof. You still don't really know if it's infinite or not.
Yeah, and you don't. But we don't. That's not where we operate. We don't operate in 100% certainty. Nobody does.
Okay, then if you want to think that
Like
way,
we
I
operate
can't
on
really
evidence. We operate on evidence, right? We operate on justifications. We operate on evidence. We operate on, sometimes, if we can, deductive reasoning. But like we don't operate on like nobody. Like, are you 100% certain that you're talking to a person right now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure of that.
Well,
No,
you're
that
pretty
brings
sure.
us to the second point.
You're pretty sure, but you're not
There
100%
is a second
certain.
point. And I am 100% certain. What I want to tell you
could you be
that is
dreaming?
this brings me to the second point.
Wait, could you be dreaming?
That brings me to the second point.
Hold on, let's not pivot
want
off of
me
this,
to
and then we
dream?
can go to the second point. Could you be dreaming?
Okay. No, there is no chance I'm dreaming right now.
Oh, okay. That seems like a reductio. That seems false.
Do you want me to go to the second point?
Yeah, you
then?
can go to the second point now after we've seen the reductio. That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. By the way, the first point where I talked about the moon and the split, as I told you, as a probabilistic explanation, I still don't have enough knowledge about the Quran to talk to you about it. So I actually highly encourage you to see people who really read and memorize the entire book and know the explanations. It's really, how to say, I can't explain it really well, and I can't even risk doing that. It will lead people wrongly, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, now let's get to the second point. The second point goes to for a few years back, I've seen a lot of atheists and debaters like that. I've seen that most of atheists go to, I think its name is Nihilism or something like that. I don't know. It's the neglection of almost everything, actually. If
I don't know what you mean by that.
know it, just
No, I don't.
then let's explain it. Maybe you know it. The atheists, or the ones I've seen, go to assuming that nothing can be real, and we can't make sure that anything is a thing in general. And that's a philosophical view that actually annihilates anything you do.
I think you mean
everything.
solipsism. You mean solipsism, and no, I don't hold that view, and I don't know any atheists who do.
Okay, I don't know what you know and what you think in yourself, but I've seen it actually.
Okay,
Why
well,
I
but
bring
are you talking
why
to
I
them or are you
brought
talking
this
to me?
point. No, let me continue then.
Go ahead,
Let me continue, then you will see why I brought it here.
please.
The reason I brought it here is that when I was searching for the internet for this stuff, I've seen a scholar, an Arabic scholar, that said a really deep quote. I don't know if it works with you or not, but I really love it. He said that we don't see the world as an evidence for God. We see God as the evidence for the world.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means at all. Like it,
You don't.
we can't
even,
we can't
you
see
don't
God,
even know.
right? So we see God like kind of explicitly, right? So I have no idea what that would mean.
Okay, I don't really. You don't even know any kind of. You don't have any idea.
I know. I like so. There are some times when I'll say like I don't know what you mean when I have like kind of a vague notion. This time I have no idea what you mean.
Okay, then let's try to explain it. I don't know if I can explain it really well. The thing is, he said it since he actually believes in God. What a shock. Okay. He said it. Why? He said because if you neglect the existence of God, then you can't really explain the entire world. Why and how and what will that do to you?
Okay.
You'll essentially sometimes, I don't know what you specifically think, but
Yeah,
most
so-
of people would
So
not.
so how can you? So okay, I know what you're saying. This is called presuppositionalism, which is fine, I guess. So how do you explain how you can know things?
Well, I totally. What do you mean by that? For a second here, to not make any mistakes.
Yeah. So how do you know that? I don't know that the sun exists. How do you know with certainty that the
Because
sun exists?
I see it and I kind of observe it by almost any sense I have.
Right. And how do you and why can you trust those senses?
Because that's all the stuff that I can have information from.
Okay, that's exactly how I justify it too. I use my senses, and that's all I have access to, so I trust those senses.
Okay, but you still believe in physics, even though you've never touched a mathematical equation.
Hold on.
Nah, you got to be joking at this point.
Well,
I know you can touch
mathematical
them.
equations are not physical objects. Like, what do you want? What do you want?
You still don't observe mathematical equations. You write them down. You
Yeah,
think
that's what
of
mathematical
them.
equations are. They're things that you write down. They're things that you look at and you can write. That's what a mathematical equation is. So yeah, I do
Damn,
look at them all the time.
I do look at them all the time too, actually. I kind of study that thing.
Like, I don't. What is the critique here? That like, you can't see physics because physics is a concept. Like, is that the critique?
No, it's the way you I don't know, it won't come out, but it's the way you see the world, how it operates, but not truly see with your own eyes. It's something you write
Well, no, we
down.
make measurements and then we interpret those measurements in like, a quantitative way. I don't know what
But
the
you
issue is.
still actually translate it to another form. The measurement doesn't talk or
Yeah,
like
the
walk.
measurement gets measured, and so then we write down what the measurement is. Like I don't.
It's you know
How
what?
I mean, like,
you know
look, I
that
see
the
the sun.
past-
I see the sun because I trust my senses. You see this. Or I know the sun exists because I trust my senses and I can see it. You know the sun exists because you trust your senses and you can see it. It seems like we have equally good justification for knowing that things exist.
Okay, and you don't believe in God since you can't see
I do
it.
not believe in God.
That's your
No,
fault.
that's not why I don't believe in God. Although if I could see God, then I certainly would believe in it. But that's not the reason I don't believe in God.
Well,
There are lots of
you
things I
know
can't
what?
see
Maybe
that I believe in.
okay, but you know what? Maybe even if you saw God, which is not gonna happen at all, maybe you won't believe in it.
I can assure you I would.
Okay, then let's go to the point or another point that I may use, but not. I don't know what you will respond to it. So you've been really unpredictable today. I gotta
That's
give you
good.
that.
That's good. I like being unpredictable.
Not gonna lie, that actually impressed me to another point. Okay, what I was about to say. Okay, what do you think is the evidence that could make you believe in God?
Well, one good piece of evidence would be if we discovered an ancient Chinese scroll, or an ancient Germanic or an ancient Nordic runestone describing the exact day and time that the moon split into. That would be pretty compelling.
Yeah. Okay, even though you're kind of, I don't want to talk a lot about this stuff. Actually,
But I mean, like
would,
that would be one thing that would be pretty compelling to me. If I received direct divine revelation in the same way that Muhammad did, then that would also be pretty compelling to me.
Okay, maybe I will actually put something here for you to think about. If you got a divine what you said?
Divine revelation.
Okay, if you got a divine revelation, would you think that you are crazy or have a divine revelation, or someone is trying to use a microchip in your head?
No, it seems to be the case that most people, when they have direct divine experiences, most people believe them. And I don't think I'm that different from most people in that regard. Somebody else might think I'm crazy, but I imagine I would be pretty convinced of it.
Well, believe it or not, you're not like the most people, since most people believe in God.
Well, sure, but like I don't think that I'm like any more immune to bias or something like that.
Well, I'm sure you are not immune to bias. You're being hella biased today.
Well, that's my point. So that's why I'm saying, like, if I had this direct experience and it was as real to me as, like, the grass is green, then it seems like I would just accept it.
Oh, okay. I don't want to actually go back and forth here, but I don't think you will actually, even if you saw
and
it.
so I didn't know I was talking to a mind reader.
No, it's not mind reading. It's just a thought I have. I actually thought a lot about stuff or about this stuff, since I've seen a lot of people neglect stuff that happens in front of their eyes. But I'm not including you or atheists. So let's just go to another topic. I don't want to talk a lot about this.
Sure, go ahead.
Stuff. Okay. What I want to talk about is that let's just say that, as I told you before, that you got a divine revelation or something like that, or you've heard or made sure that there is an ancient script in China that pretty much the way you like records the moon split. You don't think that in this whole Earth, someone would say that this is from aliens, and
Maybe they
these
would.
aliens.
I don't think I would.
Okay, then you kind of with me on the same boat here.
Well, I don't know what boat we're on.
You think
but
the boat that people would still neglect it,
well, yeah. I mean,
even if they made.
I'm sure that some people would. Maybe.
Okay. Okay. Really unpredictable, actually. Not gonna lie. You did really well.
Well, I'm glad you think so. Look,
You really did well.
I feel like I should let you go since we've spoken before, and I have a bunch of guests that are waiting. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before I
Okay,
let you
but
go?
okay, there is one question I want to give you before I go.
Okay, sure.
Did you see the Iyad videos?
The what videos?
Iyad, the channel I
Oh,
gave you the
yeah.
last time.
I pulled it up. I didn't watch them though. But I did pull it up, and it's still pulled up. I just haven't had time to sit down and watch through, hour-long videos.
I don't know. I really encourage you to see some of them at least. He talks with the resources. He's much better than me. I'm sure of that.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll keep it in mind. But I'm gonna let you go, Malik. So thanks for being here.
Okay,
Take care.
thanks.
Just ask Darth Dawkins if he's changed his diapers yet. He's too cowardly to ever come back up on my live because he knows that he can't control the conversation. All right, let's bring up another guest from YouTube. Seraphim, how's it going?
Hey man, can you hear me okay?
Oh, actually, yes, Seraphim, I can hear you. But can you give me 1 sec? I forgot that I need to go over super chats before I do this. Is that fine?
Sure, of course.
Okay, so I missed a lot. But we have Fears Interaction with $10. Thank you. Great, 2 calls in, and I already got woo all over. Ew. Don't say that. Grimlock with the $5 is always supporting me. The Layman with the $2, he was the guy that I spoke to 2 times ago. Thank you for the awesome discussion. I appreciate it. It was good. And then Mayor Zane with the £5 says, let's say everywhere else was cloudy and move on from this point. That's a fair point. What if everywhere else was cloudy except in Mecca? Anyway, thank you guys all for the super chats. And Seraphim, what you got for me?
Well, it's my first time seeing you, and from what I've been hearing, seems like you're pretty flexible, even though you don't believe in a creator or God or any kind of doctrine. But it seems that if you had sufficient evidence, you would change your mind, which is a lot more than a lot of people would say. I'm guessing I'm probably around your age. I'm in my late 30s, and I have changed my mind around this.
I'm 32.
Okay, I am older than you.
Oof.
And my beliefs have definitely changed over the years.
Just to clarify, can I ask what God you
Mhm.
believe in, just so then I have some grounding for the conversation here?
Of course. I am a Christian nowadays. Recently converted. I would say maybe 9 months ago, 10 months ago, something like that.
So are you Protestant, Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, Greek Orthodox?
Non-denominational.
Non-denominational. Okay. Okay,
No,
that's fine.
I don't attend church. I have read the Bible. But what I would say, and I completely agree with what you just said to your previous guest, that if there was some divine revelation, it would definitely make a difference. Or if you had some experience that you would believe to be true, even though maybe not everyone thinks, maybe they think you were hallucinating or something, it would make a personal difference to you, and it would be possible to change your mind. I have definitely had experiences like that, which are not conveyable, right?
Sure. So Seraphim,
yeah.
so the question I ask everybody is, what's the most compelling thing you could tell me that would convince me of your belief?
Okay. The most convincing thing that I could tell you are 2 documents
Okay.
written by are you are you aware of the Bible?
Yes,
The
I'm aware.
stories in the Bible?
Yeah, I'm aware.
Okay, so you know who Pontius Pilate is? You know who Caiaphas is?
Caiaphas? No, I don't recognize that name.
I believe he was I don't know the proper title, but he was in charge of the Sanhedrin, which is the Jewish
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
court.
Yep,
Okay.
I know who you're talking about.
So these two people, which I believe they are historical figures,
Okay.
both Pontius Pilate and Caiaphas, after the crucifixion of Jesus, which it could also be, a lot of people argue if it's a historical figure or not, me included, for most of my life. In fact,
I'm
for
willing
most
to
of my
grant that
life.
Jesus was crucified. That's fine.
Okay. So they wrote accounts to their own superiors, their respective superiors. Pontius Pilate to, I'm not sure if the Roman emperor, I think so, and Caiaphas to his superior, with accounts of what happened and what they witnessed in the days and weeks after the event of the crucifixion. And those truths are incredibly inconvenient to them. Do you understand what I mean by this?
Yeah, which account? So you're saying that, like, let's say Caiaphas. You're saying Caiaphas wrote something to who?
I can look it up,
Okay.
but I don't know exactly to who the document is addressed. The chief Pharisee about Jesus. So, is there any way I can link? Can I link in the chat in this invite cam thing?
Yeah, there's a chat box. You can just click a link, or you can just paste the link in there.
Okay, so if you are ever curious, you can
A YouTube video.
It is, but it's a reading of the transcript. The document is right there.
So I just did some double checking. Apparently, the only records that we have on Caiaphas's life whatsoever is from the Christian Bible and Josephus. So unless you're claiming that, like, we actually have text written by Caiaphas himself, like, why should I think that this is a thing that exists?
I believe it is a. It's why
Like,
do you believe that Jesus?
Well, no. I mean, like,
alive.
I don't even know if this document exists, right? If this document is, like, legitimate. If it was, like, do we have any evidence that it was, like, written by him? Do we have any evidence about any of this?
I mean, it's
because so to be clear, this thing that you just sent me comes from a book that was written in what, the 1800s?
Published in 1913.
Yeah, so, like, what's the source for this book? Because that's like 1800 years after the fact, right?
It is.
So where did this source get this information?
I do not know. I'm gonna be honest. I did not look it up, or but I do believe that this would be a real document.
So
maybe
I just
not.
Pulled up,
you can definitely
pulled
be
up
right.
a copy of the book. Let me. No, you can't see it. I pulled up a copy of the book, and it's chapter 6. That's the one in question. That's the one in the YouTube video that you showed, and it literally says records of the Jerusalem Sanhedrin by Eliezer Hiron, B22. I don't know what B22 means. Taken in Constantinople, October 16th, 1883. So the citation for this thing, it originates in 1883. And
That's right.
as far as I know,
taken in doesn't mean that it was written in.
Right, but they're not making the claim that they're like that there's some, like, ancient source that's being, like, translated or something like that. Like, where's the
I don't know.
It seems like this was manufactured in 1883 or around that time anyway.
All right, could be. I can maybe look it up, and you may be right. You may be right. Let me check the one.
And then there's the one
maybe
about
Pontius
Pontius
Pilate.
Pilate, right?
Yes.
So
The Caesar.
yeah, and so you're saying he wrote.
Yeah, it's the Acta Pilate, which is a famous document.
Yeah, okay, so let's go pull that up. So
Acta Pilate.
Acta Pilate.
Collection of
this is a gospel.
texts.
It's an apocryphal gospel purporting to be derived from an original work written by Nicodemus, who appears in the Gospel of John as an acquaintance of Jesus. So this is supposed to have been written by Nicodemus, not by Pontius Pilate.
Acta Pilate, collection of texts that are believed to contain an official report by Pontius Pilate to Emperor Tiberius regarding the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Some sources claim it's an authentic, others suggest that it is a later compilation or a forgery, which, yeah, it's again very convenient if it would be forgery. Of course, it's convenient both ways. It can be. We can debate it.
So I'm just on Wikipedia. I don't know if you like Wikipedia, but it's 2025. We can use Wikipedia. Yeah, so it says that the complete work in its existing form dates to no earlier than the 4th or 5th century, but the work behind the Christian Acts of Pilate must have originated very early. So it's not even clear like when this was from, and so I don't know. This is super. It just seems really like this is pretty far removed from like the. So like, I don't know.
It's just like the Gospels. I guess how could you know none of the Gospels or any of the other books in the Bible? We don't have the originals. They're all copies of copies of copies. Maybe edited, maybe changed. I don't know.
So
go ahead.
What it seems like is that this is from my brief reading, it seems like that the letter that was being written, the letter of Pilate to Claudius, it seems like is something akin to, some post Jesus, like 100 years after Jesus, somebody is writing something to try to explain, or try to refute some Christian some potential explanation for where the body went. And like this is exactly what we would expect an early Christian to write, right? So I don't know, like if we actually had the written word by Pilate, like if Claudius had, because a letter was sent from Pilate to Claudius allegedly, and then Claudius put it in his library, and we found that would be really compelling evidence. But that's not what we have. We have something that was written like 100 years later at the earliest,
Sure.
presumably by Christians. So I don't know. It's not. Generally, you want earlier things because earlier things will be more compelling, and this is not one of those.
Do we have any? Do you know of any from the 1st century direct?
I mean, so we do have very early texts of the Hebrew Bible. We have like the Qumran scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? There are even earlier fragments of like from the Hebrew Bible that are found in like various inscriptions and things like that. I don't know what the earliest fragment from Christian literature is off the top of my head.
I guess my question would be, are they the originals, or if it is a copy, does that dismiss the contents entirely? Does it dismiss the veracity?
But it is a little strange. So again, I'm just scrolling through on TikTok because neither of us are experts, but apparently, so the letter of it was written to Claudius, right? That's what Wikipedia says anyway. Wikipedia says that it was written, that it contains
Claudius
a letter from
Tiberius.
No, it says oh no, I'm sorry. I was looking at the letter. I was looking at the letter of Pilate to Claudius. But if we look at the letter, if we look at the one to Claudius apparently wasn't an emperor until 41 AD. which would have been like nearly a decade after Jesus died. So why would he have written this? So and this is the one that talks about the stolen body hypothesis, right? So why would, like, Pilate wasn't in charge anymore, Claudius wasn't emperor until 10 years later. Like, why would, like, it kind of doesn't make sense historically.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
So I mean, there are a lot of things that make me suspect about it, and
I get
so
it.
you have to understand that, like, something written, you know, something
after the
that
fact in a timeline that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
that
it's
is
just
convenient to
like
to
it's
confirm.
so I mean, like the alternative hypothesis is that you have a bunch of Christians who are struggling with alternative theories, and one of them heard a story and they're like, oh yeah, I heard about when Pilate did that, and then somebody else heard them say it, and then that person wrote it down. Like, I'm not saying that there is deception anywhere. I'm saying that facts can change and be embellished and be hyperbolized, and then you end up with somebody writing something down 100 years later. And that just seems like, considering that that's a thing that we know happens in the real world, it just seems plausible that that's what happened here too.
It is possible.
It seems plausible. It seems like the most likely explanation. Now, could it be the fact that this is actually like an original letter, and for some reason, like, Pilate was writing 9 years after Jesus was crucified, to some, like,
maybe not the paper itself, maybe not the actual document, that the one earliest document that we have of copy of this document, but the text in it.
Well, yeah. So maybe that text is real, but it just seems much less likely than kind of just like stories change over time. People try to explain things that they can't explain, and then somebody ended up writing it down. Like, one seems very human, the other seems like an amazing coincidence.
True. Out
So
of curiosity,
yeah, go
ahead. Outside the topic of Christianity or any specific belief, are you a completely materialistic person? Do you consider the possibility of consciousness being something outside of the material body, something that transcends the physical body, before birth, after death? What are your views
So
on
so generally, I'm a physicalist.
Okay.
I am super ill-informed on the philosophy of mind, because it's so boring to me. And so I'm generally pretty open to having my mind changed about, like, what consciousness is. Like, I mean, like, my intuitions just tell me, yeah, definitely it's a thing in the brain, because, when I fall, I don't protect my liver, I protect my brain. And so, like, there's something about, like, the brain that seems like intuitively the thing that is me. But like, that's just like intuition that I have to go on, and so it could very well be maybe like consciousness is some fundamental thing, or maybe there's some platonic forms or something. Like, I'm agnostic, but I lean towards but I'm like, I'm definitely a physicalist with regards to everything else besides consciousness, and I lean towards physicalism as far as consciousness is concerned.
And what is your intuition about what happens to that consciousness after the body dies?
It seems like it would just go away. The same place
man,
that I was before I was
right.
born.
I hope you're right, but I don't
Why?
think so.
Why would you hope I'm right? Honestly, I hope you're right. I hope that there is a God that, like, loves us and stuff, and that'd be awesome. I just don't think it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like I told you, there's a level of personal experience here that is not translatable, not communicatable.
Sure. No, that's fair.
And so yeah, I'll just say this: if God is real and is omnipotent, as believers believe that
Mhm.
he is, and he wills to reveal himself to you, he will.
Yeah,
That's
if
all.
he exists and if he exists and he wants a relationship with me, I expect that he'll do that. Otherwise, it just doesn't seem like he wants a relationship with me.
Yeah. Something in my mind fights against that sentence, but
Well,
since I'm a little on the spot here, I can't.
no,
It's
you're
not.
fine. So I was alluding to the problem of divine hiddenness, which is particularly a problem for Christianity, which is essentially something along the lines of, look, you have some people who are like going to be atheists regardless. Like there's nothing you could do to convince them. But then there surely are people who are atheists that, given the right experience, would become a Christian or whatever. And so the question is, if God truly wants a relationship with everybody, well, he's not going to succeed on those people who will never be anything but an atheist, right? He'll never succeed with those people. But he could succeed with the people who just need a bit of a nudge, right? And so the question is why do those people exist? These people who, they just need an experience, or they just need some evidence or something like that.
Well,
why do these people exist at all? Why do people go to their graves this way?
If God is truly all-powerful, then it doesn't matter how much resistance a mortal being would make.
Well, yeah, maybe he doesn't want to
interfere
with free will or something. Who knows?
Maybe, but his will would always, if he is all-powerful.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if someone is truly impregnable and truly inflexible. If it would be his will to change that person's mind would be changed.
I mean, like, look, I was just granting that, like, maybe some people wouldn't be able to, because some Christians are like, oh, well, he would never interfere with fruit. But I agree. Like, and so all I'm saying is my position is, look, I can't be in a relationship with God unless I know that God exists, unless I have some reason to believe that God exists in the first place. Because there's two separate things, right? On the one hand, there's like belief that God exists, and on the other hand, there's forming a relationship.
Or you're desperate enough to even believe.
So what I'm getting at is that, like for example, let's say I wanted to hang out and be best friends with Scarlett Johansson and her very funny husband. I couldn't have an expectation that they would be open to that unless they know I exist. So I would have to like write them a letter first or something, or I'd have to like, send them a Skype call or whatever the kids these days are doing, right? In the same way, if God wants a relationship with me, like, I would expect that God would like reach out and initiate that conversation. And if he then says, if somebody then says, he has, but you just didn't see it, well, that would be like trying to initiate a relationship with a blind person by writing a sign for them to read. Like, God knows what it would take to initiate that conversation. Why just do the thing that he knows would work?
Well, personal interpretation also plays a big role in that, because one person may do some action in the midst of a big group of people, and they may make some subtle facial expression or something, and only one person picks up on that, and the whole group makes a certain judgment about that person. Oh, they are happy, or they were whatever. This is a very well-adjusted person, but someone else might pick up on a subtle thing, or maybe they are mirroring, I don't know what the psychological term, like projecting themselves onto them. So there's a level of personal interpretation of the world around us, and I'm pretty sure that all of this, some people will read the Bible and be convinced at first reading. Some people will take the word of their parents or some authority figure that they believe to be convincing, and others won't. So there is a level of personal.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. So if God wanted a relationship with everybody, then that would mean that then he knows
he would tailor it,
right?
Sure.
That's the point. So Yeah,
and
so
also
it's just a
tailor
little
the timeline, and also
right. So it's a little it should be at least puzzling. But Seraphim, I'm gonna let you go because there is somebody else that I want to talk to. But thanks for being here, bud. I appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Now, to everybody who's watching, make sure to like the live. And if you want to support me, there's easy ways to do it. You could send super chats on YouTube. That's a way to do it. There's also a Cash App and stuff like that. But if you don't want to do that, that's fine too. By the way, somebody said Darth Dawkins is in the box. He is not in the box. And then also this other person, Pray for Answers podcast. Well, I'll just send him an invite because he's not in the box, but we'll send him an invite because he said that he has proof. Pray for Answers. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. Are you a Christian or are you some other?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm a Christian.
And you say that you have
And by the
scientific
way,
and mathematical evidence,
name,
right?
What was your name? I'm sorry. My name
You can
is
call
Jared.
me Blitz. Call me
Blitz.
Blitz.
Okay, nice to meet you. My name's Jared.
Likewise.
So I'll start off by saying I'm a non-denominational Christian. So I pretty much I go based only off scripture only.
Okay, so
I found
sure.
Yeah, so because I found, I mean, you have a lot of stuff going on now. Christianity is really crazy nowadays. I could see why it gets a bad rep. A lot of Christians don't even know their Bible. I mean, there's stuff in there they have no clue about. I mean, like you have Christians running around saying, follow your heart. The Bible says, your heart's deceitful above anything. So it's just a lot of this stuff Christians even throw around is not even in scripture. It's actually the opposite of scripture. So I'm not your normal go to church type person. I believe, as scripture says, I am the church. The temple of God dwells within me.
That's fine, but like what's the compelling reason that I should believe? Like I get you're not like other Christians, fine. Okay. So why should I believe what you believe?
Well, yeah. No. And I'm just letting you know just so we can kind of establish who I am, not your typical Christian.
Okay.
Now, before we start our conversation, I have to ask you this, because based off my beliefs, I have to establish this first.
Sure.
Now, are you truly a person that if I can prove to you that Jesus is God, are you truly looking to have a relationship with God?
Well, I would certainly believe that Jesus is God then, if you could prove it to me. The question is what kind of God? And well, that depends on like the quality of this God. Maybe let me give you an example. Like you might be able to prove to me that like Super Hitler was real, but even if Super Hitler was real, that wouldn't mean I would want a relationship with Super Hitler. So like, if the God that you can prove, if the God that you can prove Jesus is like a good God, then sure. If the God that you can prove Jesus is like evil, then maybe not, but I would still believe it exists.
Well, no, I mean, in the sense, like, how do I explain this? Because see, I'm commanded that if somebody like the best way I could say this is like, are you doing this only to troll Christians, or do you truly want to?
I think you're the first. Well, you're the second Christian I've talked to today. So no, I want to hear arguments and to see because if what you say is true is actually true, then I want to know it.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's all I'm trying to establish. Okay. So we have that established. So, okay. So what basis would you need? Would you need a mathematical basis? Would you need a scientific, like what type of basis?
Some form of evidence, preferably compelling evidence. It could be in the form of empirical data. Maybe you have some experiment or something. It could be in the form of a deductive argument, maybe mathematical, maybe logical. It could be in the form of like some sort of like experiential thing. It could be, anything, just some degree of justification that I find compelling.
Okay, so a side note, what I'll tell you to really look into, it's a book called More Than a Carpenter. Okay, this is a man who is an atheist journalist that sought out to deny that Jesus even existed, let alone was God. Okay, now
so I'm not going to read that book because my reading list is enormous and I hardly read it all as it is. But if you want to make the argument from that book, by all means.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, you don't even have to read the whole book. You'll be able to go see who this man is, Josh Dowell. If you go look into him, look into the book. Josh Dowell.
How do you spell his last name? Dowell.
Yeah.
Josh Dowell. Because it seems like there are a lot of books that are like this identical story, where it's like I was an atheist and then I found Jesus and so I wrote a book, which is this seems like a non-unique.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. See, and that's the thing is you have to be able to listen to what I'm telling you before you dismiss it right away.
I
This
wasn't dismissing
man,
it. I was just telling you that I've heard of there are other people who are, they were atheist journalists and then they became Christians and then they wrote a book. Like Lee Strobel is another perfect example of this. He was like the exact same. Anyway, but so why don't you give me an argument rather than citing a source?
yeah. So that's what I was just saying. That's a little side thing to look at. That's somebody who's done a lot more research, I'm sure, than me or you into the matter that, and they came out a Christian when they were an atheist. So that's just something that's interesting to look into. Now, what I'll say is this, okay? Are you aware? Okay, and this is not debated by people on both sides. They both agree on this. Statistically, okay? Statistically, for Jesus Christ, okay, because you do believe that there was a man that was called Jesus of Nazareth that existed and was crucified by Pontius Pilate. Do you believe that to be true?
That seems reasonable. Sure.
Okay. So in order for that man, okay, to fulfill even 7 prophecies in the Old Testament, in the Torah, okay, the statistical probability is off the charts if you go look into it. Okay, and this has already been.
That'd be fine if A, and I'm not convinced he fulfilled any prophecies, or B, that the man that you can prove that there was a man who actually did those things. Those are the questions, right?
Well, no, so what I'm saying is though, how do you decide when a source is credible? That's the question to you. So if somebody comes and tells you something, what do they have to have behind them for you to decide it to be a credible source?
Depends on the type of claim, right? If my good friend who lives 30 minutes away texted me and said, "Hey, I was taking my dog to the vet and I'm in the area. Do you want to hang out?" I would believe that she is credibly in the area. I would just believe her. I wouldn't ask for evidence. I wouldn't like say, "Hey, prove it that you're in the area by turning on your location." Like for a really mundane thing like that, absolutely I would just take them on their word. Even for mundane historical things, like, yeah, was there a guy named Josephus who lived, about 2,000 years ago? Yeah, probably. I mean, like, there were a lot of people who lived around that time. And so like the existence of a guy, sorry, I was in the middle of my sentence. Now, even historically,
you go on and on with these type of things that really they're nonsensical.
I've said 2 sentences.
I can give you.
I've said 2 sentences. Look, I've said 2 sentences. The first was talking about my friend visiting.
But see, your
analogies,
your analogies have nothing to do with
I wasn't done yet. That's why you shouldn't interrupt me. On the other hand, if somebody makes the claim that they can shoot fire out of their hands, and they said, "Oh, just trust me, I wrote about it in this book that I wrote 5 years ago. Just believe the book." I'm gonna ask for more evidence than that because that's not something that happens every day.
Yeah. So then with that analogy, I'll go based off that. Okay. So if 500 people seen a man shoot fire out of his hands, right, and they wrote about it, okay. And when these people were hunted down for believing this, they built whole cities underneath the ground to live underground to be able to believe in this man who shot fire out of his hands. Would that kind of make you think that that might be something to look into?
Yeah, sure. Who are the 500 people?
The 500 people that are documented in scripture.
Oh, what are their names?
No, all the people that's documented in scripture. You can go look it up.
Well, the 500.
There's 500.
So who are the 500? Who are they?
They're all the people that witnessed it. There was over 500.
Yeah, but like who are they? Like we know Josephus wrote Josephus. We know who Pontius Pilate was. We know who Tacitus was. We know who like the authors of these accounts of like historical things were.
So if somebody said that 500 people witnessed something, you need to know what every person's name is. That's nonsense.
I mean, I would need to know that they existed, right?
So the proof they existed, okay, there you go. That's perfect. The proof they existed is the cities that they built underground. Are you aware that there's cities that were built underground right after Christ was crucified that they went to live in to be able to worship him?
Who went to live in them?
The early Christians, right after Christ was crucified.
Are these the same people who saw Jesus' resurrection?
Yes.
How do you know?
How do I know? Because it's documented by historians. You can go look it up.
Who? Which historians?
Go look it up. Google it. Say early Christians.
This is your argument, isn't it?
Early Christians that built cities underground. Go look it up.
Okay, I will Google early Christians.
You say you want to learn.
Early Christians who built cities underground. Let's look it up. Smithsonian. We love Smithsonian. This huge underground city may have been refuge for 70,000 early Christians. Okay, cool. This persecuted by the Romans, early Christians in what is now Turkey went underground literally. Okay, cool. This was dug up, 5 years ago. Researchers believe the complex was inhabited through the 6th century CE and was later used as a catacomb. Neat. The underground complex also includes a number of places researchers think were used as places of worship, including one with the Star of David carved near the ceiling. Okay, that's super cool.
So were you not aware of this at all?
No, I'd never heard of this. This is really neat, though. But
Yeah,
it doesn't
so
say
see?
anything about these are the people who saw Jesus resurrect.
So right there. So if that's one thing that you're admitting that you knew nothing about, can you only imagine all the other things out there? That's why I'm trying to have a conversation with you.
Well,
Can you
yeah.
only
So
imagine all the other stuff that's
so
out
that's why
there?
that's why I'm asking for the evidence. So on the one hand, we have this early Christian underground region in Turkey, which is cool, very very cool. Maybe Jewish because there was some place of worship, but it was kind of Christianity was kind of Judaism for the first few centuries. And then on the other hand, you claim that there's these 500 people who saw Jesus resurrect, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to say that these are the same people, but I don't see the link.
Well, there's no reason not to believe that they aren't, because these people.
That's not
these
attested
people
to
in the
anywhere.
region, these
Nobody
people in
makes
the
that
same-
claim.
No, but
Where's
these
the historical
people,
evidence?
these people are the worshipers of that man. They
Well,
built
yeah,
that city.
but so lots of people were worshipers of Jesus. Not everybody saw him rise from the dead.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is, do you believe in? Okay, so for example, just because you didn't see the battle of the Civil War, and nobody alive had seen it, it's documented in a book.
I think we
How
have
do you know?
photographs, by the way.
Yeah, well, let's go back even further than that. How do you know anything existed in history? You just believe it because it's written in a book?
Well, I mean, depending on the size of the claim, I might demand more evidence, like archaeological evidence. So
Well,
I can give you an example. For a long time, are you familiar with the Iliad?
No.
Okay, so the Iliad is like one of the most famous epic poems of all time. It was written or is composed by Homer, maybe in the 8th century BC or something like this. Very, very, or well, no, it was probably composed much earlier. I think it was written down in the 8th century. Anyway, in it describes the siege of Troy. You have the Greeks, who are I guess they were Mycenaeans, I guess, at the time, or anyway, ancient Greeks. They sailed over to somewhere in Anatolia, modern day Turkey, and they fought a battle with the Trojans, who lived in a city called Troy. And this is the siege went on for 10 years, and there were heroes, and there were gods, and there were there were duels, and there was anyway, it's a great story. Minoans, not Mycenaeans. And so for a long time, people thought this was just pure myth, right? This is pure myth. It, like Athena shows up and Ares shows up and there's heroes that are like indestructible. People thought it was a story that people were telling. And then in the 1850s, maybe it was 1840s, a German archaeologist found the ruins of Troy. People didn't even think Troy existed because, it was just in this fantastical story. But then somebody found archaeological evidence. And so now we all agree, yeah, Troy was a city that existed. So what I'm saying is that if you're going to make this fantastical claim that there was this like enormous city that was like a center of blah, 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 and like, there's these battles and such, then maybe I'll be skeptical of that if it's only written about in a mythological story. If you go find archaeological evidence, though, I'd believe it. So like it just depends.
So then you're saying, I understand what you're saying, and you make a good point. So you can't necessarily connect A with B. We'll walk away from that. So there is archaeological proof, that there was early disciples of Christ, that have writings that were, and now you explain this to me, all of these men provably in history went to their death believing Jesus Christ was God because of what they had seen. They had seen him rise from the dead. They had seen all this happen. Do you truly believe that 11, 12 guys are going to go to their death?
Sorry, what's the historical evidence that 11, 12 guys went to their death, like the apostles? What's the evidence of that?
It's all in history. It's written down.
Where?
Huh?
Who wrote it down?
You can go
Where?
look. It's all in the archives.
I'm being facetious. I'm being facetious. I know the answer. We actually only have evidence that like 2 of them were murdered.
We actually only have, and what's that based on? Who are you basing that on?
Extra biblical sources. And in
Okay.
fact, most of them aren't that most of the apostles aren't even martyred in the Bible. That's just church tradition. So in fact, you said you were sola scriptura, but apparently not, because it's church tradition is where most of this comes from.
Well, no, see, and see, the thing is, you have to be completely honest with yourself here. You aren't looking that's why I asked you in the beginning, because the way your demeanor is tells it all. It says it right off. You are not
This is a
looking for
cop-out.
Jesus. You're not looking for Jesus.
I'm looking for
You aren't.
evidence, and the evidence
No,
you're
you're not
presenting
looking for evidence
is like
because
miserably bad.
when I even tried to give you statistical evidence, what did you do? You totally you walked straight away from it.
Look, so statistics requires that the two things happen. That namely that the thing that you're saying that's statistically unlikely happened, and that the thing that you're saying that's statistically unlikely is independent of the thing that of the prediction. Like you have to have good epistemology here. You can't just say, oh, it's unlikely, therefore it's true. Like you have to actually examine the
So if
claims.
a writing was made before a man existed, and a man came along, and there's documented historical proof that even people that don't believe in that Bible have even it said that man did exist and that these things did happen, and that even doing seven of them. Now this is historical proof. I can go and bring this stuff to you. I can go. I'll go look. I'll go look and
Jesus existed.
bring it up to you.
I agree.
If
Jesus
you want
existed.
me to. I don't have it right here for you, but I can gladly bring it to you.
Look. I think I and most I'm not a historian, but I think I and most historians in the field agree that Jesus existed. What the non-Christian historians will not agree to, and you'll probably have a hard time finding this, is that Jesus did any miracles, or that Jesus, the actual historical Jesus, fulfilled any prophecies. That is a claim that like you have to justify that.
Okay, now what I also this is also what I want to ask you is, so do you believe in IQ test? Do you believe in that?
I mean they exist. I don't know if they're a good way of evaluating intelligence. Are you about to bring up that Korean guy?
Oh yeah, see, there you go. You're getting ready. But there's actually but the thing is, the two
and then there's that guy that was on Michael Knowles' show.
Yep. The two smartest men, based on IQ, are both Christians and said.
So to be clear, the Korean guy administered this, or the Korean guy's IQ test is probably fake. Like it's probably not real. If only because.
And what do you base that on?
The organization that he founded was the organization that administered the IQ test.
Well, yeah, then I would agree with you on that.
So like that, and IQ tests can't really be used to differentiate above IQs of 160 because the sample size is too small. So you can't really use IQ tests to measure an IQ that's like 270 whatever. The guy who was on Michael Knowles' show, I watched that interview, and he might have a high IQ, but he is clearly ill-informed about things that I'm knowledgeable about. So why should I trust anything that he has to say?
So if somebody was, for example, so that's like saying if somebody's very experienced in one field, that you necessarily, just because they didn't know about another field, you wouldn't listen to them about what they were.
So what happened is that he talked about like physics for a bit, and it was like clearly obviously nonsense. I'm a physicist, by the way, that's like my training. It was clearly obviously nonsense that he didn't know what he was talking about, but he was talking about it with such confidence, which means that if he's capable of talking about something that he doesn't know anything about with such confidence and get it wrong, that means I shouldn't trust anything that he has to say, right? Because there could be things that I'm not knowledgeable in that he's talking about that's also obviously wrong, that would be obviously wrong to an expert. So like, yeah, it just seems like why would I trust this guy?
The thing is, to make that argument though, we'd have to look at the exact what you're speaking about. You know what I mean? Because in a sense, I'd have to see like, you're a physicist saying something, he's saying something about physics. So I guess it would depend on exactly what you're talking about, because you saying you're right doesn't make you right. He could necessarily be right and you're wrong. Do you get what I'm saying? So that's more based on exactly what you guys are talking about, you know, particularly, I would say. So back to what we're saying. So just like you said, so I'm not saying that's 100% proof at all. I'm just saying that
it is an appeal to authority, by the way.
Yeah, it's just something to consider. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that's proof of anything.
Okay.
So now what I'm saying is this though, okay? The person we both established, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, okay, was this man that did exist back then, was crucified by Pontius Pilate, okay, which now every from, I believe it's the Quran, everything out there that's after Jesus, all do not deny that he's divine. They actually all say that he's divine. Every other religion.
I think that Muslims will say that he was a prophet, but not that he was like actually godly.
Yeah, they say he's a prophet, and then
Right.
there's other religions that say it too. But see, it's interesting because Jesus says he was the only way. Okay.
Okay.
Now, what I'm saying is, if we've established that he was a person, that he was crucified, okay,
Mhm.
there's even this is a thing I just thought of now that I want you to look into. It's very interesting. There is a document that they dated back to exactly around the time Jesus was crucified. Okay.
Okay, what's the
Now
document?
this is it's I got to think of the guy who had brought it up. It's a Chinese document that they found in China. Okay. Chinese document around when Jesus was crucified that says one man will die for the whole world. And they had actually explained that, I guess it was written during that solar eclipse, that they had proven there was an eclipse around the time Jesus was crucified.
Wait, hold on, now I'm confused. When do you think Jesus was crucified?
I believe they said, because there was a thing I was watching about, they were doing it based on like when he was actually born, all that type of stuff, because they were basing it on astrology or astronomy. So they were basing it on the position of the stars, stuff like that. So they were saying he was more than likely born, well, based on, if I mean, you'd have to go based off scripture. There's certain things like the shepherds being in the field, so they wouldn't have done that. So we know he wasn't born in winter. So they were going based off.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
But as far as when Jesus was crucified, it was around the time of the Passover.
So yeah, okay, so you're saying that there was a solar eclipse around the time of the Passover?
Yeah, that's what I'd have to look into what they were talking about.
So this would be like 30 in like the early 30s or something like this?
Yeah, something like that.
So yeah, why don't we just look? When was Passover? We can just look at when Passover, because we have records as to when all, like, not records, we can do the math to figure out when all of these eclipses happened. Right? So why don't we just look? And you're saying that this was documented in China? Yeah,
so there was this writing that was documented back to the first century, early first century. Now this is long before John got there or anybody else.
This is in like 30 what year do we think Jesus was crucified? 32, 33,
yeah,
34?
The early beginning of the first century.
I mean, there's eclipses like every year, or actually there's 2 eclipses every year.
So like the 30s, 33 AD.
Okay, so that's 20 eclipses to look through. And was this a total solar eclipse or no?
Total. Yeah, they said it was
okay.
A total.
So there were 6 total solar eclipses in the early 30s. Let's just look at them. Oops. Come on. So can you see my screen? I can just pull it up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. We'll just look. See what we have what we have to say. Okay. Window capture.
And I think it's more of like a side note. The solar eclipse is not really the basis of what I'm talking about, really.
Well, but if the solar eclipse thing is false, then we shouldn't trust any of it, right?
Well, no, it doesn't even speak of the solar eclipse. This was something I was speaking of that was part of what I was talking about. The document, you'll have to look up the document that this guy was reading of, that they had found. Okay, now this was in China.
I've heard about that one, and apparently it doesn't say that, but we can look at that in a minute. But let's just look at the eclipses. So, oops, this is the wrong year. So
apparently, when Jesus was crucified, because based on scripture, you'd have to look at, I don't know if they would record that, but they'd said you'll know because it's based on when there was a total solar eclipse, because it speaks of in scripture. But there was also an earthquake. There was an earthquake during a total solar eclipse. So there would narrow it down.
So here are all of the total solar eclipses between so I guess there was one, actually I guess there's 7. So there's one solar eclipse in November of 31 AD. There's one solar eclipse in March 19th of 33 AD. So we can just go look at where that was. Well, that didn't pass over anywhere in China, so couldn't be that one. Why don't we look at this one? This was in September, so that one can't be it because it has to be the Passover. This one was in March. This one passed over east. Oh, I guess totality was over the ocean, so it can't be that one. And then we can look at another one. This one was in February. That can't be it. So, in fact, there was no total solar eclipse visible from China around the time that Jesus would have been crucified. So, I guess that's not true. Now, do you want to go look at the Chinese source?
Saying what? Why are we narrowing it down to a year though when that's not explained?
I looked from 31 AD all the way up to 36 AD.
So you don't
the
think
early 30s, right?
Well, no. What I see, I never even narrowed anything down to a date. Nobody knows the exact year when he was crucified. For me to say that,
well, I think historians agree that it was like 32 or 33.
Yeah, so if they say it was 32 or 33, now you're saying there was no solar eclipses at all that were seen from China.
No total solar eclipses visible from China. I'm on NASA's website. They have a document of all of the trajectories of solar eclipses over the last 5,000 years.
So now, how does this pertain to the document I'm talking to, though? Because I don't.
You mentioned a solar eclipse, and if the solar eclipse is mentioned in the document, that means that the document got it wrong.
No, I never said the solar eclipse was. I mentioned a solar eclipse during his crucifixion. I never mentioned it.
Okay, well that didn't happen. So why did you mention it?
Well, no, a solar eclipse did happen when Jesus was crucified.
No, we just checked. There were none.
Oh no, there was.
So do you just disagree with NASA?
No, what are you talking? Oh, do I disagree with NASA? Do you know what NASA means? Actually means the word
National Aeronautical and Space Agency.
No. Do you know what it actually means? In Latin?
It's an English abbreviation, so it doesn't mean anything in Latin.
NASA doesn't mean anything in Latin?
No, it's not a Latin word. There might be a cognate, but like
there you go. So
NASA is an abbreviation.
What does that mean?
It doesn't matter. NASA stands for National Aeronautical and Space Agency.
What makes NASA so credible?
Okay, so you just think that like the math they did was wrong?
Here's what I'm saying is you place credibility automatically with certain people and agencies.
With NASA, because the math isn't so hard. In particular, this math didn't originate from NASA. Actually, you want me to go find another catalog of eclipses? Not from NASA, because I guarantee you that we can find other ones. Here's another catalog of eclipses. These come from.
You see what you're doing though is you're jumping down a rabbit hole of eclipses.
Here's another catalog of eclipses.
Why don't you bring up the document?
When were the total eclipses? And there were none.
Why don't you bring up the document?
No, but this is important. This is important. You're asserting that there was a solar eclipse.
The scripture says that. The scripture says that there was.
And scripture got it wrong. Then we know when all of the solar eclipses were.
No, well then it's not within the year that they're explaining. Then the historian.
Okay, so
I go based off scripture. I've already told you that.
Clearly.
So there was an eclipse.
So what month is Passover typically?
It's in April.
It can be late. It can be late March, April, or early May. So between 25 AD and 36 AD, so that's an 11-year time frame, right?
But you also got to take into account for the changing calendars. The calendars changed.
So this is using the current calendar, and the notion that Passover takes place between in spring, that is a current calendar thing. So it doesn't really matter. But the point is
like we actually had 13 months. Had 13 months.
The point is Passover was always in spring, so we can just check the spring months, right?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is
like converting the calendar, it just doesn't.
So
do
I won't argue with you over the eclipse thing. You can believe whatever you want on the eclipse. There was an eclipse. There wasn't an eclipse. Bring up the Chinese document we spoke of. I don't know.
Let's
why
go find it.
That.
Well, because you brought up the eclipse, but as long as we can agree that there was no eclipse, that's fine.
Well, no, I'm not agreeing that there was no eclipse during Jesus' crucifixion. We just might not have the date tied down. That I'll agree on that. But what I'm saying is, I'm not going to agree that there wasn't an eclipse when Jesus was crucified. You can believe that. That's fine.
Okay, so I just pulled up something. Who knows if this is reputable? But we can just read it. Did Emperor Guangwu really mention Jesus' atonement? Is there any evidence for its authenticity? Christian answers, please. Kind of weird. And apparently there's this source here. We can look at that in a minute. So we can just read this. And then we can look at the sources, because the guy provides the sources. So let's just read this really quick. Restrict your answers to Christian's answer, please. Indicates that you want to hear what you want to hear. Do you want me to tell you what you want to hear? Do you want to know about Emperor Guangwu? Anyway, I was baptized as a Christian, so that should count for something. Would it be unchristian if I said I get impatient, blah, 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 blah? So volume 1 of the history of the later Han goes up to only 5 years. Year 7 is in volume 2. Year 7 was 31 CE. So there is some doubt as to whether the crucifixion had taken place by then or not.
Well, you got a lot of hate in your comments, man. I'm going to take off. Bye.
What a runner. That's so cowardly of him. Anyway, let's keep reading it just so we can like show how bad of an argument this is. Anyway, so apparently it would be quite remarkable if the news spread from Jerusalem to Chang'an so quickly. 1500 years later, it took official church correspondence at least 7 years to reach Macau from Italy on well-established trade routes under the auspices of the Catholic Church. Anyway, apparently this is the entirety of the year 7 for the reference, and there is apparently, if you can read Chinese, there is nothing there about surprising news from the distant West. The emperor discusses burials and human trafficking and blamed himself for an eclipse, but other than that, it was a pretty quiet year. So let's actually just punch this in and translate it. Why not? In the 7th year, on the first month, this is a long ass paragraph. There was an edict. Prisoners who were not guilty of capital crimes, those who were sentenced to death, blah, 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 blah. Another edict was issued. In this world, lavish burials are considered blah, 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 blah. Only in hurry, this announcement should be made to the world to let them know the virtues of loyal ministers, filial sons, loving brothers, and respected brothers for simple burials and funerals. Then there was something about the commander of the grain transport on a day in March. There was a country with a lot of troops. There was a meal. There's soldiers not listening to. There was an emperor issuing an edict. He's blaming himself for the sun and the moon, I guess. My poor virtue led to the disaster. I was exiled. I trembled with fear when I saw the sun and the moon. So I guess the emperor is upset that there was emperor's upset. Oops, you guys can't see this. Shoot. Sorry, I'm so sorry. There were something about memorials. The sun and the moon dim, and the people have committed the fault. Sure. Oh, this does say, I will grant amnesty to one person. I guess this is the emperor saying this. All the ministers, officials, and governors and prefects should select one person who is virtuous and upright and send him to the imperial carriage. Okay. I will examine him and test them. I guess this is what the emperor said. Cool. This is just like an imperial edict. On the Wushu day of the 5th month, and then former General Li Tong was appointed as the Grand Marshal. Officials who suffered from okay, and then it just goes on and on. So I think that's probably this bit. So what's happening is you have an imperial edict that says, you know, the people have committed fault and I will grant amnesty to one person. And then it goes on to say, you know, that person who's good, send him to the imperial carriage. I'll examine him and test him. But this is like the emperor saying this, right? This doesn't have to do with Jesus. And also, this is the 4th month of the holy summer. So this would be like after summer, right? After summer started. So like it just doesn't really seem to line up. Anyway, let's bring up a guest from let's bring up Artemis Spawn of Zeus. How's it going?
Hey. Wait one second. I
right?
gotta mute the stream.
Okay. Yep.
Because I can hear 2 of you now. There we go. Okay. Now I can only hear one of you, I think.
Okay, great. So,
Awesome.
what god do you believe in?
I believe in the goddess. Okay.
The goddess.
She's
Okay.
yeah. She's the. I don't know. Are you familiar with panpsychism?
I am, but it's not particularly interesting to me.
Okay, well, she's the inevitable panpsychic goddess.
So do you believe that there is a entity that is responsible for creating the physical reality? Something with a mind.
I don't necessarily think that there's an entity responsible for creation. No.
Okay, well that's
No, I don't think the goddess at least wouldn't be her own creator. That wouldn't make any sense.
Okay, well, but that's what I mean by God. So that's what I'm atheist about.
That's the only qualification you're looking for in God?
Yeah, a being that's responsible for
That they're the creator of the universe?
Or perhaps like if you think that the universe has always existed, then like the sustainer or like the foundation of the universe or something like that.
I think that's a lame definition of God.
That's just what most people mean when they say it. So that's the definition that I use.
I think most people refer to like an all-powerful being.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can tack that on, but like not everybody believes that God is all powerful either.
Well, you're not debating whether or not you're an atheist. You're debating creationism. There's a lot of theistic beliefs that don't have a creation myth.
So what
I don't
qualities
know
does
any
this God
offhand,
have?
but I know they exist.
Okay. I mean, then, but like, look, I'm an atheist towards traditions that I am aware of. Like, I don't know what you want.
That could make you aware of my tradition. You seem to be like hesitant to become aware of it, though.
It's just not the subject of the conversation. Like, look, what? Okay, so why don't you tell me the qualities of the goddess that you believe in?
She's all powerful. She knows everything that there is to know.
Okay.
She can control everything as much as anything can be controlled.
Okay. Is she
Uh,
physical?
Yeah,
So she's like made of stuff, like atoms?
Yeah.
Where is she?
everywhere.
Well, if something's made of atoms, then it would take up space. So she can't be everywhere.
Yeah, she takes up all the space.
Oh, so you're just referring to the universe. It sounds like.
Well, yes, but the universe is a conscious entity in and of itself. Like it has its own mind.
Why do you think so?
That's what makes it the goddess and not just the universe.
Why do you think the universe has a separate mind? Has like its own mind that's not like just the collection of the minds that exist independently in the universe?
Because it would be unethical to believe anything else.
Unethical?
Because
How do you figure?
yes, it would be unethical. Well,
That's a claim.
okay. For
Interesting
starters,
claim.
it's assuming that a being that has consciousness is unconscious is it might not be inherently harmful, but it's at least tantamount to harm, you know? Once you look at a human and you tell them like, oh, you're not, there's nothing going on in there, it's like the next step is you're going to do slavery or something dumb, you know? You're going to do
Sure.
something
But
horrible.
I'm not convinced that the universe has a consciousness. So why would I like I don't have to go around and assume that rocks have consciousness in order to be ethical.
I think you do.
That's presupposing that they actually have consciousness.
I'm here to convince you that you have to actually.
Okay, so your view of theism comes from your view of panpsychism, and then you just say whatever the consciousness the universe has, that's God.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
it would have to be like if there is a consciousness that encompasses everything, that is everywhere, that is aware of all things and can do whatever it wants. Like that's what else is there to call it but God?
Yeah. So does it know what the solution to the Riemann hypothesis is?
The Riemann hypothesis. If there's a solution to it, it would know. Like if there is a solution to be known.
What if nobody in the universe knows it? What if no what if no people know it, like you and me, and like no aliens know it, and no humans know it, and then would it know it?
I mean, it might not have pieced it together yet, but like it would have all the, you know, everything to put it together.
It just seems like it wouldn't be all knowing then.
She'd just have to like think about it. I don't know if she's bothered to think about it.
It seems
There's
like
a
she
lot
wouldn't
of
be all
things to
knowing though
think
if she
about
doesn't know the
here.
answer.
Well, if you asked her and she thought about it, she would know the answer.
How do you figure?
Because she has like I said, she has all the bits to work it out, and she has the capability to work it out. I just don't know if she's bothered.
We don't even know if there is a way to
Like-
work it out.
That's the thing, right? Like that's why I said she'd only know the answer if there is one.
Right, but
and she
my
can only
point
do-
is that like it seems like you're giving this thing additional qualities beyond the universe just having because if you just say the universe has consciousness, then yeah, you I mean you could say that if you're a panpsychist, and then you would just say that that consciousness has knowledge of all of the things within it, right? But it
Yeah.
might be that at this stage in the universe's development, there is no solution to the Riemann hypothesis. So it wouldn't have awareness of that.
I mean, yeah, it would have awareness of the fact there isn't a solution to the Riemann hypothesis.
No, but there could be in the future that it wouldn't know yet.
Well, either there is the solution to the Riemann hypothesis or there isn't one. If the universe doesn't know of the solution, and the solution is not contained within the universe, and the solution doesn't exist.
No,
If
it
the
just might not be
solution does
contained
exist
within the universe yet.
then the
It might not
solution
be
does exist.
It might just not be contained in the universe yet, right?
Well, the universe doesn't take on new information from elsewhere, you know? So if the information to solve the Riemann hypothesis is out there, it's out there.
Well, look, I mean,
The-
do you agree that like a millisecond after the Big Bang, nobody had like thought about PCs?
Sure, yeah.
So like, in what sense would the universe with consciousness, what you call the goddess, have known about PCs?
She wouldn't have.
Right, but PCs would, actually, then you agree. She wasn't all-knowing, because PCs are things that do exist now, and an all-knowing thing would have known that they would have existed in the
She
future.
is all-knowing. She has all the knowledge. The knowledge of PCs didn't exist back then, so it wasn't there to
Right,
have.
but so that's my point. New knowledge
she has
can
all the
show
knowledge
up.
that exists.
She has all the knowledge that is known, perhaps,
Yeah, that's all of it.
but that's not all
if
knowing.
it's not known, it's not knowledge.
Well, she has all the knowledge that's known by things within the universe.
She has
Let's-
all knowledge that is possible to know given the information within the universe.
Right, and in principle, it's possible to know about PCs even if they didn't exist.
If it was possible to know about PCs, then she would have known about them. I thought we were postulating that it was impossible to know about PCs.
No, I mean, like,
after the Big Bang.
Of course, like if you could have a thinking entity a millisecond after the Big Bang, like you could just teleport. Like if you just
it
teleported
takes time to
me.
construct thoughts. Thoughts aren't like
Okay, so let's say like
thoughts
5
aren't
seconds after the Big
separate
Bang.
from
Fine.
time.
Let's say 5 seconds after the Big Bang. It's possible to conceive of a thing that doesn't exist, right?
I mean, let's be real. Let's give ourselves like a couple of days here. PCs are a complex thought.
Okay.
It's gonna take
Well,
a while
wait.
to-
She's all knowing. She shouldn't need
you
a
know-
couple of days to figure it out.
The knowledge has to follow the rules of right? Like the knowledge. She's not magic.
Then it sounds like there are times when she doesn't know everything.
She knows all of the things that there is to know. If she doesn't know it, it can't be
No,
known
you're
yet.
what you're saying
All
is
the,
just
all
that-
the anything. I'm not anything that could be known with the information that she has available to her, which is all of the information in the universe, is known.
Well, hold on. No, you're saying anything that could be known. You're making a mistake. What you really want to be saying is everything that is known by her.
No, I'm not making a mistake. I know what I'm saying. Anything that could be known given the information within her.
So does she know things beyond what the things within her know?
She doesn't like.
Like, let's say I have an original thought, right? Let's say I have an original thought.
Okay.
I do mathematics and physics as my job, so that happens sometimes. I have an original
Yeah.
thought that no human has ever thought of, and just imagine that there are no other aliens or whatever.
Okay.
For the sake of argument.
You have
So
an original thought that has never been thought before by anything. Okay.
never been thought before by like a person. Maybe so the question is did the goddess know about the thing that I was thinking about before I thought about it?
If you had an original thought that had never been thought by anything before,
Well, I said by people.
then no. But
It had never been thought by
She'd
people.
know it.
I mean, it had never been thought
If
by
it never
people.
thought by people,
Yes.
then she would, because I mean, then that leaves space for it to have been thought by other things. If it's been thought by
Right.
something else,
So
then
what else
she
would
would
it have? So when I think of an original
well,
thought,
any set of things is its own consciousness.
yeah. So would
Any
it
set
have
of
been
interconnected things is its own
would it have been
consciousness.
would it
So
have been a
long
rock
as
that
the
thought of it?
information is out there.
Would it have
What?
been a rock that thought of it, or would it have been a galaxy that thought of it, or would it have been like an electron that thought of it? What thought of it
It
before
could
me?
have been a rock. It could have been an electron. It could have
Are
been a
are
loose
rocks
collection
capable
rocks
of
on
that
the
kind
bank
of
a
thought?
stream. It could have been like a stream, a tree, and a mushroom all work together on the problem.
Are
Okay?
rocks capable of thoughts?
Uh, I would assume so. Very simple ones, I would imagine.
And
they are rocks.
And why do you think that they're capable of having thoughts, even very simple ones?
Because they are a thing that is connected to other things, and therefore it has consciousness.
Consciousness doesn't necessarily, unless you're saying consciousness is thoughts, but like the traditional panpsychist view, I don't think says that, and maybe you're not a traditional panpsychist, but I don't think it says that like consciousness and that like electrons have thoughts, for example, or that rocks have thoughts. It's rather that they just have kind of like this is what the other guy was talking about, like some kind of fundamental awareness, this like substrate of consciousness without like the experience of consciousness or something like that.
No, I think to have consciousness is to have thoughts. What a rock thoughts are, I think, might be so simple that they're like beyond our comprehension almost, you know? Like it's
yeah, so why not just ask what is the rational justification for believing that any of this is true?
Well, okay, consciousness is okay, so first truth that we're just accepting here, okay, I'm conscious. And there are other conscious things. I'm just kind of I base my reality off of that. Okay.
Yeah, sure, I agree with that.
That has to be true. If that's not true, I don't know what the fuck to do.
Well, to be clear, it doesn't have to be that there are other conscious things. It just has to be that I'm conscious, and then we can kind of infer that.
I understand that argument, but if there weren't other conscious things, then nothing fucking matters anyways. I just
right, but
completely
Artemis,
discount that.
Artemis,
I can't even like acknowledge that.
I agree. We can't live our lives. We can't live our lives just thinking that we're the only conscious things. However, the way that we conclude that there are other conscious things is by looking at is by like talking to people, right? That's how I conclude that you are conscious because you're having a conversation and you're acting kind of like I'm acting. And if you're similar to me, then you probably share similar features like consciousness. But the point is that when I look at a rock, it doesn't do that. So on what grounds do I have for thinking that it shares the similar experience?
Okay, I agree that it seems intuitive to assume that things like me are conscious. But also, I feel like that's the inherent belief that sits at like the core of all bigotry, that it's like, you are not like me, therefore you are different, therefore you are worth less, you know? It's only the things that are like me that are worth something.
That may very well be. That may very well be
a very negative assumption.
May be, but that doesn't give that's not actually an argument for why I should believe rocks have consciousness.
It's not, but it's an argument as to why your argument as to why rocks don't have consciousness is kind of bullshit.
No, it's not an argument against that. It's an appeal to emotion, which maybe it's a correct appeal to emotion. I agree bigotry is bad, and I agree that, dehumanization is bad. But it's not actually an argument against the idea that we infer consciousness from the similarities that we observe in the world around us.
Well, you can, right? Like, if you're saying that the qualities that make something conscious are its ability to like hold a conversation with you and the ability to interact, like a lot of people would argue that ChatGPT is, or at some point in the future will become conscious.
A lot of people do argue that, yeah. I don't know.
You're seriously getting an I don't know camp on this one? That's
well, yeah, no, I mean like so
ChatGPT is actually conscious.
So I've interacted with ChatGPT a lot.
Like, I'm a panpsychist and I don't think ChatGPT is conscious.
Well, yes, if you're a panpsychist, then of course you do. You think everything is conscious.
ChatGPT isn't made of ChatGPT isn't made of physical matter, therefore it is not
Of
conscious.
course it is. It's made out of it's made out of electrons in certain configurations.
No, the concept of it exists sometimes in electrons in certain situations, but ChatGPT can be replicated infinitely across anything. It doesn't exist in any.
Every instance, every instantiated version of ChatGPT exists instantiated in the form of electrons.
And the machine that ChatGPT is running on itself is conscious, but ChatGPT, the program, it's just a program. It's not conscious. It's not.
What's the distinction? What's the distinction?
To be conscious.
Wait, this is by the way, this is the wildest claim that like Oh, it's like a wait. Hold on, aren't you doing bigotry? Oh, it has to be like me. It has to be made of matter in order to be conscious.
Don't you fucking call me out of my own game.
I didn't know I was talking to a matter
I
supremacist.
suppose, but also like I don't know. I don't know, man.
Anyway, this is to say, I don't think ChatGPT is conscious, but I think that it might be closer than we think.
Okay, I was just hoping to use ChatGPT as an example to show that really like the ability to conversate isn't actually all that good of all that accurate of a marker of consciousness.
Well, it's a
ChatGPT
better marker. It's a better marker than like just sitting there being a rock.
If I could show you that under no other under no outside influence, a rock was capable of moving under its own like by itself, a rock is capable of motion. Would that like be at all evidence to show that rocks are in fact conscious?
I don't know if it would be evidence that rocks are conscious, but it would be evidence enough to get you a Nobel Prize in physics.
Well, I mean, considering the paper's already published, I doubt it.
That rocks move on their own with no outside forces?
They're capable of it. The paper's called Causality as a Folk Tale or something like that. It's about Norton's Dome.
Oh, okay, yeah, but
Norton's Dome,
Norton's Dome is a math problem.
Science.
Yeah, no. I'm familiar with Norton's Dome.
It is.
No, but that doesn't say anything about actual
Norton's
rocks
Dome?
being
Wow.
able to do it. Doesn't say anything about rocks being able to actually do it.
mean,
It implies certain
assuming-
features of the universe which we don't know hold. It implies like analyticity
It-
and things like this.
It implies that if you leave a perfectly spherical rock on top of a perfectly formed dome, and you leave it
And neither of
alone,
which
that the
exist,
rock
by
will
the
just
way.
roll off.
But yeah, but neither exist. So it's not possible,
Sure,
actually.
But like, well, the way that I see it is all that the dome is really serving as is a means of amplifying the motion that the rock has taken.
Which is, to be clear, it's zero.
It's an infinitesimal.
No, it's zero.
The rock moves an infinitesimal.
The initial conditions are zero. The point of Norton's Dome is that it's like a weird math thing that's a result from like a PDE, because the PDE has some singularities. It results in this PDE having
the weird
non-unique
math
solutions.
thing- The weird math thing is that over an infinite period of time, a rock is an entity is capable of moving an infinitesimal amount for like no reason. It just does that.
Well, but no, that's not a thing that like rocks actually do, right?
It is.
And
a thing,
that
right?
also-
It's
that-
everything
that- that
does.
also-
Everything's constantly capable of moving an infinitesimal over an infinite. It's
According to
unnatural, but
whom?
it's true.
Okay,
That's the
according to
implication
whom?
of Norton's Dome.
No, the implications of
That's the
Norton's Dome.
implication of Norton's Dome.
To be clear, the implications of Norton's Dome is that when you lose like certain kinds of continuity, your system is no longer deterministic. That's the implication of Norton's Dome. But the point is we don't have like our universe isn't continuous, so it doesn't even matter. like you need to have like a certain notion of continuity in order for Norton's Dome to be applied, and it's just not how our universe is. So Norton's Dome is
continuous.
no, things are made of atoms. Atoms are not continuous matter.
You mean atoms are not continuous matter?
They're discrete. They come in chunks, right? Things are made of chunky stuff. Norton's dome requires a point particle at the top of a perfectly smooth dome, neither of which exist, right?
Well, if matter is made of chunky stuff, then yeah, point particles do exist.
No, they're not
It
points
would
though.
just be like one chunk.
They're not points. They have size, right?
It doesn't matter. Just center it on the top. It doesn't affect Norton's dome. It doesn't need to be.
Well, Norton's dome is a problem with a point particle. If you're I mean, I suppose in principle you could.
Because a point particle approximates a solid shape. Like that's the only reason to use.
Sure.
It can be a solid.
Sure. And now you have the second issue of how do you have a what a like a perfectly smooth discontinuous derivative dome. Like that, how do you make that in the real world?
Like I said, the dome only serves as an amplifier for the rock's motion. You don't really need the dome.
In the thought experiment,
just there
because
to
this
make
is
the
a thought
motion more
experiment, by the way. In the thought experiment, there is no infinitesimal motion.
I don't think that's a statement that physicists make.
In the thought experiment, in the Norton's
I think
Dome
that's
thought
what you
experiment, there's
just
no
said right
infinitesimal motion.
I'm pretty sure that's just something you've said right now, based on like it feels good to say.
No, like Norton's Dome says that the initial position of the rock, or of the point particle rather, is exactly 0. It's exactly at the origin for all times less than some time capital T.
Yeah.
Which means that it's not moving at
And
all.
then at the time t.
At the time t, it starts rolling down.
Yeah, it moves in infinitesimal. That's when the movement happens. If it didn't,
I believe you now. You know what? I'm convinced now because I think that my my tripod just moved on its own.
Hey.
My tripod was like, who are you to call me not conscious? And so then it attacked me. But yeah, to be clear, there's no infinitesimal motion in Norton's Dome. There's just no motion, and then there's finite motion.
Yeah, but like the thing that starts the finite motion is an infinitesimal motion. If it didn't,
if by that you mean that
it never would roll down the dome.
If by well, no, the point is that, well, hold on. Now you're assuming that it needs a cause in order to move, right?
But the point is somewhere other than directly over the origin in order to roll down the dome. Yes.
That's actually not the implications of Norton's Dome. Norton's Dome doesn't stipulate that. That's why Norton's Dome is very weird, because it's completely undeterministic. It just says, yeah, it just stops being at the top and starts rolling down.
Yeah, that's how free-willed actions look when you analyze them. That's how you would expect a free-willed action to look.
I guess if that's the claim. Unfortunately, this is not a thing that happens in the real world, so it's not really relevant. This is like a math thing. There's no free will in the math, unless you're saying the math has free will.
The math just shows that free will has to be.
Not really.
There's space for it. Like I agree that also it could just be like true randomness, but that's boring and I don't like that idea.
Well, the point is Norton's Dome is genuinely non-deterministic. That's why it's very weird. But look, we might be at an impasse here, and it's nearing the end of time when I would end my live. So I'm gonna let you go, Artemis. But thanks for being here.
I don't even did I even get to the ethical part?
No.
Of it?
Yes, well, yes, you did. You called me a bigot, and then I called you a bigot for being a matter supremacist. Take care, Artemis.
It's ethical because it would be harmful to assume that something that has consciousness.
I know, but likewise, the same thing with ChatGPT.
You must assume consciousness for everything.
Yes, you must
be because you must assume that it's unconscious.
You must assume that ChatGPT is conscious.
Yeah, you're right. I must.
All right, get out of here, Artemis.
Like I don't like.
Go on, get. All right, y'all. It is noon. And I'm kind of hungry. I could use some. I could use some lunch. So I'm gonna end the live here. Actually, let me check if I have any super chats. Today's super chats. No, you guys were super generous. Thank you. From Chip Payet with the $5. The caller needs to read Sean McDowell's book on the Apostles. I don't know what that is, but probably. If you're suggesting it, probably. All right, y'all. I'm gonna go make myself a sandwich, and then I'm gonna make myself some coffee, and then I'm going to try to prove a theorem, and I might hang out with Ian later if Ian's on. Take care, everybody.